Chapter 1. Junxie suddenly woke up. He didn't even wait to open his eyes. He subconsciously slapped the ground with his right hand and was about to jump up. This was a dangerous place. Life and death were at stake. He couldn't stay here for long. This was his first thought when he woke up. This was the instinct of an excellent killer. His body jumped into the air. Suddenly, his arms went limp. He couldn't support his body weight at all. With a bang, he fell back down heavily. For a moment, Junxie was horrified. What was going on? Then, he suddenly realized that there was a soft bed beneath him. Looking around, it turned out that he was in a rather lavishly decorated room. However, it was empty. Other than a square table, there was only him lying on a giant bed. It was really a giant bed. This bed could sleep at least 7 or 8 people, and it didn't even feel crowded. What was going on? Am I not in the middle of a battle? How did I end up on a bed? Junxie's thoughts were still stuck at the time before he fell asleep. Or it should be said, it was temporarily stuck at the last thought of his previous life. Junxie was an assassin. He was a particularly excellent gold medal assassin. Since his debut, he had been successful in his 5 years. His success rate was 100%. Therefore, he became the #1 assassin on the list. The name, Evil Prince, was also ranked at the top of the world's underworld list. He also had another honor of being #1, and that was his bounty, which had firmly occupied the #1 spot on the world's bounty list for 3 years. It wasn't that no one dared to take it, but no one could. No one had the ability to kill this almost legendary miracle assassin. There were many first-class assassins who took this mission. However, they all died, but the evil prince was still alive. A tycoon in country Y offered a bounty of $100 million to buy the life of the evil prince. However, the 2 assassins who accepted the bounty, 2 world-class assassins who were as famous as the evil prince, died a violent death 3 days later. After that, no one was willing to accept the death mission. Everyone stayed away from it. Although the bounty was increased many times, no one dared to take it. No matter how wonderful money was, it was meaningless if there was no life to enjoy it. The name, Evil Monarch, had become a taboo on the underworld's bounty list. And the name, Evil Monarch, was a deterrent to the underworld of the various countries. Many people knew who the evil prince was, but no one knew what this evil prince, the king of assassins, looked like and what kind of person he was. Junxie's character was just like his name, 1 word, evil. 2 words, very evil. These 3 words were extremely evil. He had always acted on his own, never joined hands with anyone, and never had any friends. Moreover, when he accepted a business, not only did he have to look at the buyer, but he also had to pick his target. No matter how much money the client he disliked offered him to kill a defenseless beggar, he would not hesitate to refuse the offer. But when he saw someone who deserved to be killed, he would automatically do it. Then, he would go to the person's opponent's house and ask for a reward. And more often than not, this family had never hired him or even heard of him. Rumor had it that, once, he killed a human trafficker who was full of evil deeds, but he could not find the victim. Left with no choice, he asked a little girl who had been abducted and sold for a dime coin. He even said with conviction, "I have never done a business without asking for a reward, and I will never be an exception." His character made his master and fellow apprentices, who knew him well, speechless to the extreme. Rumor had it that, once, he cleared the toilet paper before going to the toilet. When his master went to the toilet, there was no toilet paper left, so he asked him to send some toilet paper over. In the end, he took the opportunity to ask for a service fee of $500,000, and his master gave in. As for why his master gave in, it was because that day, he called all his fellow apprentices to the toilet door, and even invited a few beautiful women to visit, but he believed that his biggest weakness was that he was too loving. As an assassin, and a top assassin whose hands were stained with blood, This sentence had made countless people scoff at it. But this guy claimed to be loving, and there was some truth to it. At home, he could not bear to see the rich oppressing the poor, especially those officials oppressing the commoners. Abroad, he could not bear to see people oppressing their own people, because of this patriotic character of his, who knew how many terrible disasters he had caused. But it was precisely such a person that people still flocked to hire him like a flock of ducks. This was because not only was his marksmanship outstanding, and his shots never missed, he also had a body of unpredictable martial arts. Whether it was his fists, palms, or swords, he had a good cultivation. However, the biggest reason was that his mission completion rate was 100%. Although this result might not be the last, it was definitely unprecedented. He was fully deserving of being the ultimate assassin in the assassin world. He was also the only assassin in the world who had never had a record of failure. But deep down, this gold medal assassin was actually a typical nationalistic youth. And this time, he volunteered again. He heard that the secret agents from the M Nation had unearthed a valuable secret treasure in the Kunlun Mountains of the Z Nation, and had already smuggled it back before the National Security Bureau received the news. So, this typical nationalistic youth, Jun Xie, was furious. How could the magnificent treasure of China fall into the hands of the M Nation in this peaceful era? Jun Xie single-handedly killed his way over. He arrogantly challenged nearly 100 secret agents of the M Nation, from assassination to direct confrontation. After killing more than 70 people, he finally managed to snatch the secret treasure. At that time, the secret agents of the M Nation had been scared witless by him. If he wanted to leave, he would definitely be able to do so easily, and Jun Xie had absolute confidence in his heart. But when his hand came into contact with the secret treasure, an exquisite pagoda that was only the size of a palm, an extremely unexpected supernatural event occurred. His injured hand grabbed the small pagoda, and suddenly, he felt his whole body go numb. He could not even blink his eyes. He did not notice that the blood flowing out of his wound was constantly flowing into the small pagoda, that very delicate, exquisite, and also very strange little pagoda. In his last memory, he only saw no less than 50 miniature grenades flying toward him, and more than 20 different types of guns spitting out tongues of flame at him. He had the ability and the strength to kill all these people in one fell swoop, but he couldn't move at all. This feeling was driving him crazy. I, Jun Xie, have never had a match in my entire life, and I actually died here in such an unjust manner. But it's not a loss for me. The number of corrupt officials, tyrants, and agents from various countries who died in my hands adds up to more than 1,000. It's worth it. Worth it. Other people go to the underworld with a smile, but I go to hell with a smile. In this life, I live a vigorous life. I live a free and unrestrained life. I have a clear conscience. Although I have killed many people, none of them did not deserve to be killed. Since that's the case, I have no regrets after killing them. So what if I go to hell for this? Kill, 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 kill. Kill, 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 kill. Purge all evil. Even if I am a despicable killer, so what? In this long world, who can live as freely as I do? How could he live so happily? Ha ha ha! Jun Xie thought of this, and could not help but laugh out loud. Young master, what's wrong with you? A timid voice came from the side, as if frightened by his actions, and there was already a hint of wanting to cry. Then, a cold little hand touched his forehead. Young master? I'm not dreaming right now, am I? Am I not in hell? Jun Xie was startled and he suddenly opened his eyes. Then, a strange memory suddenly rushed out from the bottom of his heart. Pieces of strange information rushed into his mind like a tide. Jun Xie felt as if he was struck by lightning, and was stunned. I am in another body? Have I reincarnated again? But why is the memory of my previous life still vivid in my mind? Could it be that I did not drink Meng Po's soup? Or is it reincarnation in another body? First, I have transmigrated? Second, I have reincarnated in another body? Jun Xie stared blankly, and for a long time, he did not understand what was happening in front of him, and did not move for a long time. Just as the little hand next to him was waving in front of his eyes in panic, Jun Xie suddenly shouted in ecstasy, "Damn it! Good people are indeed rewarded. No matter what is going on, I am not dead, and there is such a good thing. It seems that I have accumulated countless merits in my previous life, and it is probably immeasurable merits." Wahahaha! With a scream, a little girl around 10 years old shivered and hid to the side. Her beautiful big eyes blinked in panic, and stared at the nightmarish young master in front of her. Her petite body trembled, and her face became paler, like a frightened little quail. Another cry rang out, this time it was a mournful cry. However, this cry came from Jun Xie's own mouth, because he suddenly realized that his voice was sharp and shrill, just like a girl's. Could it be that his thing was not there? No. I was scared to death just now. I thought I had transmigrated into a girl's body. Jun Xie wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. After calming himself down, Jun Xie began to check his body. Blocked meridians, loose muscles, stiff joints. How did this guy get along? His body is really weak. This is really bad. Jun Xie secretly muttered, but it doesn't matter. As long as my meridians are not broken, in 3 to 7 years, I will stand on top of the world again. After making up his mind, Jun Xie then realized that he was in a completely strange world. This was not like the Earth that he was familiar with. He was truly alone here. He didn't know anything, and he didn't know anything. What were the rules of this world? What was in this world? After thinking about all these, even with the psychological quality of this cold-blooded killer and evil prince, he actually became a little confused. Looking at the antique furniture and bed, the special clothes that did not belong to his era, and the joy of not dying and transmigrating slowly calmed down, followed by a wave of confusion. So, I really can live again. As soon as this exciting thought came up, a lot of disappointment and pain surged from the bottom of his heart. It was a subtle feeling of rootless duckweed, making his nose a little sour, his eyes a little sore, and his heart a little stuffy. Jun Xie curled the corner of his mouth in a self-deprecating way. He, who had almost never had tears in his life, almost shed a tear. It's hard to give up my country, and it's hard to leave my homeland. I thought I could be very free and easy, and I thought I could let it go easily. Who would have thought that when things came to a head, everything became real, and I suddenly realized that I can't let it go, I really can't let it go. I thought I had nothing to worry about in this world, but now I realized that I actually have countless things to worry about. Most importantly, in this strange land, I can no longer find my own sense of belonging. Sense of belonging, I'm still an outsider in my bones. Jun Xie quietly closed his eyes and gently tilted his head to the side. When no one noticed, a teardrop silently slid down his face. This was the first tear of a man in 2 lives. A man doesn't cry easily, because it's not the time to be sad. He stared blankly at the young, almost childish face in the bronze mirror in front of him. The face was slightly thin lips, and long eyebrows slanted to the temples, making a pair of eyes a little slender and sharp. Jun Xie smiled bitterly and murmured, I have to say, this guy is quite good-looking. He's quite handsome, but isn't he a little too much of a gigolo and a little too effeminate? Thinking back to his previous life, how awe-inspiring was that? How fierce was that? Although he wasn't particularly attractive, his eyes were a little small, a little thin, and the bridge of his nose was a little low. Overall, his image seemed a little too common, but he was a standard man. As for those gigolos, although they also had what a real man had, they just looked down on them. Never would they have thought that after transmigrating, they would end up wearing the body of a standard gigolo, especially when this gigolo was quite pretty. Buddy, did you bring me here? His right hand gently rubbed the small pagoda-shaped pattern on his left wrist. The pagoda-shaped pattern looked like a tattoo. A trace of pride appeared on Jun Xie's face. Even though I've transmigrated, this thing is still in the hands of the Chinese. I didn't let it fall into the hands of the foreign devils. This pagoda-shaped pattern was exactly the same as the exquisite pagoda that Jun Xie was desperately fighting for. Although it had turned into a small pattern on his hand, Jun Xie was very sure that this was that small pagoda. He himself couldn't explain why, but he had this kind of feeling in his heart. It was very real and very mysterious. Looking at the only pattern that could bring him comfort from his previous life, Jun Xie's heart was in turmoil. He didn't know what kind of feeling it was. However, he had always been calm, so he didn't show anything on his face. He was still indifferent. Calm. Suddenly, the small pagoda pattern that he was gently rubbing suddenly emitted a blurry yellow light. Then, Jun Xie suddenly felt his head become heavy. Then, he felt that there seemed to be something extra in his mind, and the pattern on his hand suddenly disappeared. Strange. Shaking his head, Jun Xie was amazed. This thing was really strange. First, it turned from a palm-sized pagoda into a tattoo on his body, and then it disappeared miraculously. Could it be that this thing was actually a legendary treasure of the gods? Young master, the old master invites you over. Just as Jun Xie was about to check if there was something extra in his mind, a voice suddenly rang out. Invites me over? Jun Xie raised his eyebrows. What for? Why should I go over just because the old man asks me to? Does he think I'm his grandson? He swallowed this sentence before he could ask it out. Only then did he remember that it seemed that the old man was really his grandfather, at least the grandfather of this body. I don't know. The little girl looked at him in horror and lowered her head. Her long eyelashes blinked in panic. Her 2 legs were in front and one behind, and her little body slightly turned sideways, as if she was ready to run away at any time. Chapter 2. Jun Moxie, 16 years old, the only direct descendant of the Jun family of the Tianxiang Empire. He was an idle, easygoing, and hated work. He was a super foppish playboy who was just waiting to die. To put it simply, he was a parasite that had no value even if he lived. This was the general information of Jun Xie's new identity. No wonder you were transmigrated by me. My nickname is Jun Xie, but you are Mo Xie. Isn't this a natural contradiction? You are not wrong. In his mind, he briefly recalled Jun Dashao's past actions. Jun Xie sighed. This kind of scum, if it was in his previous life, he would definitely be a target for me to kill. Of all the people I could have slept with, I ended up in the body of such a trash. Could be said that this was the will of the heavens. People often say that if you kill too many pigs in this life, you will be reborn as a pig in the next life. These words seem to make sense. In his previous life, he had killed many hedonistic young masters. The hedonistic young master's grandfather, Jun Zhantian, was the Grand Duke of the Blood Orchid Kingdom. He was also the most powerful person in the military. His father, Jun Wuhui, was a great general of the empire. He died 10 years ago. His mother died 9 years ago. His 2 older brothers, Jun Mo Yu and Jun Mo Cho, died in a war 3 years ago. There was also an uncle, Jun Wu Yi, who was also seriously injured in a war 10 years ago. Although he survived, he was paralyzed from the waist down. Such a huge family, it could be said that it was full of loyal warriors. Unfortunately, it had fallen to the point where it was about to be cut off. Only Jun Moxie was left, and he was transmigrated by Jun Xie. Fortunately, his body still belonged to the Jun family. If Jun Xie had a son in the future, he would still be the Jun family's bloodline. Could be considered as a gift from the heavens to the Jun family, since the heavens are like this, and seeing that we are both surnamed Jun, this assassin will reluctantly live for another life for you. Jun Xie grinned and shrugged. Actually, I really don't want to. This is just a broken body, a broken reputation. How much scolding will I have to endure? Voiceover. June Moxie's drifting soul is shouting in grief and indignation, I don't want to either. You scoundrel, you're still pretending to be innocent after getting a bargain. Pushing open the door, June Xie stepped out. The ground was bathed in sunlight. June Xie sighed as he stared at the bright sunlight. The sun is still the same sun, but I am no longer me. June Moxie was never June Xie. But my heart is still the heart of the evil prince. So what if it was another world? 2 female servants stood at the door. They bowed and said, Greetings, young master. June Xie nodded indifferently. He looked at the 4 other female servants who were busy with something not far away, then looked at the people around him, and couldn't help but shake his head. Looking at the people around him, other young masters were served by charming beauties, but the ones around him were all aunties. The only bright one was an 11 or 12-year-old Lolita. In his impression, this seemed to be the arrangement of his powerful grandfather. These female servants all had one characteristic, which was that they were very healthy and strong. Looking at their legs, they were all like poles. What are they doing? Raising his head, June Xie pointed at the female servants in the distance with his chin and asked, They are helping young master feed the birds and dogs, as well as those fighting beasts. The older female servant lowered her head and replied in a somewhat timid manner. Oh! June Xie strolled over. Well, it was really a dazzling lineup. There were 7 or 8 neatly hung bird cages on the flower rack, and several birds of different colors were jumping around in them, very lively. Not far away, there were a few big dogs lying there with their tongues out. Each of them was full of fat. Further away, there were a few small bamboo tubes, and the sound of crickets was rather clear and melodious. It seemed like they were very valuable and good at fighting. Well, this young master really had a wide range of hobbies. In a cage at the side, there were actually 2 colorful poisonous snakes hissing. Looking at all this in disgust, June Xie frowned and said, In a while, find someone to sell these things that can be sold, and throw out the ones that can't be sold. Otherwise, kill them and eat their meat. Don't leave them here, it's disgusting. This is a place for people to live, not a zoo. Hearing this, the 6 female servants and the little Lolita behind June Xie immediately widened their eyes. They raised their heads and looked at their young master. At this moment, the 7 of them had the same thought in their minds. What is wrong with this young master today? These are things that you spent a lot of money to buy, and you have always treated them like treasures. Throw them away today? Buy them tomorrow? Don't sell those 2 snakes. Wait for me to come back and stew them. After taking 2 steps, June Xie said without turning his head. Everyone was speechless. After passing through a garden, a few pavilions, a playground, and a large fish pond, they walked along a path lined with 2 rows of trees for almost half an hour before arriving at Grandpa June's residence. Only then did June Xie realize that his residence and Grandpa June's residence were located on the south and north side. If one were to calculate the distance in a straight line, it would be at least 5 to 6 li away. It seems that this family of mine is really big. If I am not mistaken, this should be the capital of this country. Aside from the imperial palace, there are probably only a few families that can own a huge mansion with a radius of tens of mu in the capital. Grandpa June was seated behind his desk. Although he was already over 60 years of age, his hair and beard were still black and glossy, giving him the appearance of a man in his 40s. His dignified face was filled with helplessness. Looking at his grandson lazily and weakly entering the room, Grandpa June almost couldn't control his temper anymore. Grandpa June Jean came from a poor background and became a general at a young age. He moved unhindered throughout the world, causing the enemies of various countries to tremble in fear. Not only was he outstanding in both literature and martial arts, he was also one of the few Tianxian-level experts in the Tianxiang Empire. His character was calm and resolute, and he never showed his emotions. Just from the phrase, born from a poor background, becoming a general at a young age. It can be seen that how many children from poor families could reach the position of a general? What's more, becoming a general at a young age. Jun Jean Tian used less than 40 years to go from a lowly commoner to the current Grand Duke of the Blood Orchid District. Although it is said that heroes are created by the times, but looking at the entire history of the continent, there are only a few like this. This experience is enough to be proud of. But when he saw his only surviving grandson, he felt a bellyful of helplessness and resentment towards iron for not becoming steel. Grandpa Jun really could not figure out how his family's bloodline and high-pressure management could give birth to such a vile child. This kid was neither good at literature nor martial arts. Whenever he picked up a book, he would feel dizzy. Whenever he heard about cultivation, he would run away faster than a rabbit. Other people's children and nephews were already talented and famous, or their xianqi cultivation was already on the right track, at least level 5 or above. But this precious grandson of his had already defeated 5 teachers, and his xianqi cultivation was only at the pitiful level 3. Such a disappointing thing, but he learned how to indulge in sensual pleasures, eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling without a teacher. He could even be called a genius in these aspects. To think that a hero like him would have such a grandson, sighing weakly, Grandpa Jun could not help but think, if his son and his other 2 grandsons were still alive. Thinking of this, he laughed at himself. If they were still alive, would they be able to spoil this only child to this extent? When he received the news of his son Wu Hui's death, he forced himself not to cry, boasting that he was a famous general and a hero. When his 2 grandsons, Mo Yu and Mo Cho, died on the battlefield, he also held back his sad tears. His son was a hero, and then Wu Hui was crippled for life. Finally, for the first time in his life, he shed tears. But there was still a trace of luck in his heart. He still had a grandson, and the Jun family's lineage could continue. But now, it seems that the last grandson was a little bastard, a useless bastard. What can I do? I heard that you fell out of bed last night? And you even fainted? Is that so? Jun Jean Tian asked lightly, putting away the emotions in his heart. Huh! Jun Xie raised his head, feeling somewhat puzzled, but also somewhat relieved. If he were to ask about other things, Jun Xie would have been able to dodge the question by relying on the memories left in his mind. But he did not know about this matter. Furthermore, this matter was also one of the biggest doubts in Jun Xie's heart. When he woke up this morning, he found that there was nothing unusual about this body. Then how did he cross over? At this moment, from Grandpa Jun's question, he vaguely guessed that this guy had fallen out of bed while sleeping and died. What a powerful debauchee, an idol. To fall out of bed while sleeping and die. Jun Xie expressed his heartfelt admiration in his heart. Such an expert really needed to be looked up to. Huh, what huh? Grandpa Jun slammed the table, blowing his beard and glaring at him. Looking at his son's mischievous appearance, he could not help but become angry. Bastard, you didn't even know that you were secretly attacked by someone. If this old man had not taken precautions, you would have already gone to meet the king of hell. Look at you, can't you be a little more promising? It turns out that the kid was secretly attacked by someone. Jun Xie secretly curled his lips, thinking to himself, your so-called taking precautions is nothing more than this. Under your precautions, that grandson of yours has already been reincarnated. Seeing that he did not speak, Grandpa Jun was somewhat surprised. With this idiot's idiotic temperament, how could he be so quiet? If it was in the past, hearing that someone had secretly attacked him, he would have already jumped up. But now, his expression was indifferent, as if he did not care. Moreover, there was a faint sense of coldness. Am I seeing things? Grandpa Jun found it hard to believe that such a cold attitude would appear on this disappointing grandson of his. Chapter 3. Forget it. Although we are in the same house, You deliberately moved to the southernmost part of the mansion in order to avoid me. Sigh, you will move back here tomorrow. Jun Tian looked deeply at Jun Xie and said regretfully. No matter how much of a debauchee he was still his grandson. Moreover, he was also the only bloodline of the Jun family. At present, although the external affairs were peaceful, the princes were slowly growing up. It was the time when the internal tides were surging. As the number one person in the military, he was like a towering tree that everyone wanted to lean on or wait for him to lean on. And it was the best way to frame his only bloodline. If Jun Xie did not move back, he was afraid that such things would continue to happen in the future. I am living there. It is quite good. There is no need to move. Jun Xie flatly refused. What a joke. He wanted to see what the assassins of this world were like. If he moved back, wouldn't he lose this opportunity? When Grandpa Jun mentioned this matter, Jun Xie's heart was filled with a faint excitement. Assassins, that was a very distant thing. But it was also the most intimate memory, you bastard. Grandpa Jun was furious. He raised his hand and was about to slap Jun Xie. But just as his palm was about to hit Jun Xie, he stopped and sighed. His eyes were complicated. You go. Is this the first time this kid has refused me? He actually dared to refuse me today? And he even refused me so bluntly? Jun Xie bowed, straightened his body, turned around and left. Oh, there is one more thing. In the future, you are not allowed to pester Princess Ling Meng anymore. There is no room for discussion in this matter. Forget it. Grandpa Jun's voice was filled with an indescribable sense of dejection and discouragement. For the past few years, the Jun family seemed to be the most powerful family in the country. However, they had a fatal weakness. They lacked a successor. The only descendant of the third generation was the debauchee Jun Moxie. Although Grandpa Jun looked like a man in his 40s, his mentality was not the same. He had a clear understanding of the ways of the world. He knew that if he were to pass away one day, the Jun family would be erased from this world in a very short amount of time. Judging from Jun Xie's current situation, this was already an inevitable outcome. In fact, it could even be seen as the final outcome. Thus, Jun Tian had once put on a brave face and proposed to the emperor that Jun Moxie should marry His Majesty's most beloved Princess Ling Meng. If this matter were to succeed, then even if he were to die, Jun Xie would still have the protection of his prestige. Moreover, Jun Xie would also be the husband of the princess and a relative of the emperor. As long as he did not overstep his bounds, he would be able to preserve the Jun family's lineage. The princess's husband seemed to be a grand position, but it was actually the most awkward position in the court. As long as the family was not too powerful, they would be afraid of the emperor's son to marry the princess. And the father-in-law would have to kneel to greet their daughter-in-law. Especially with the princess's special permission, the prince's son-in-law was absolutely forbidden from taking concubines. If the princess was eccentric and jealous, it would be very difficult for the family to live a good life. However, for a debauchee like Jun Moxie, this was a great guarantee. At least for the Jun family, this was the best plan. Therefore, Jun Tian proposed this marriage because he had no other choice. His Majesty the Emperor naturally understood the feelings of his old comrade in arms. He was tempted by Jun Xie's words. However, after carefully understanding Jun Xie's actions, coupled with the fact that Princess Ling Meng would rather die than comply, he finally decided to refuse. Big Brother Jun, it is not that I do not want to give you face, but I am also a father. Ling Meng is my most beloved daughter. How can I give my daughter to Sai? His Majesty the Emperor lowered his stance and did not finish his sentence. Jun Tian felt as if he could not catch his breath. As a father? For the sake of his daughter? If this was 10 years ago, when the Jun family was at its peak, even if Xie was 10 times more debauchee, as long as this old man proposed this marriage, wouldn't you go wild with joy? The fickleness of human nature is like drinking water. This was the resentment in Grandpa June's heart. Oh, I understand. June Xie stood at the door and said indifferently. There was no surprise or joy in his tone, it was as calm as a bowl of plain water. He then took a step forward. Ever since Grandpa June revealed his intentions, June Moxie had always considered himself as Princess Raimu's husband. He had been pestering Princess Raimu, causing her to be extremely annoyed. However, when Grandpa June saw his grandson's indifferent expression, he was somewhat surprised. Whether June Xie was seething with anger, or hysterical, or even a shrew cursing in the streets, Grandpa June would not be surprised. However, his indifference was beyond June Zhantian's expectations. How did his temperament change after a fall? Grandpa June stroked his beard and looked at June Xie's back with a profound gaze. After a long time, June Zhantian clapped his hands and said, "Send a few more experts to protect the young master day and night. Do not let anything happen to him. If there are any who do not open their eyes, kill them on the spot. There is no need to have any misgivings. This kind of thing can only happen once. How can I, June Zhantian, allow you to harm my grandson?" A cold light flashed in Grandpa June's eyes. In the empty hall, Grandpa June seemed to be talking to the air. However, an indistinct voice suddenly came out of nowhere. "Yes." June Xie walked out facing the rising sun. The warm sunlight shone on his slightly pale face as he strolled towards the small courtyard where he lived. Along the way, there was a constant stream of servants bowing to him in fear and trepidation. June Xie ignored them all and continued to think about his own matters. No one knew that in the heart of this third young Master June, a sentence was echoing. What is an assassin? As the name suggests, an assassin is a hand that kills. A black hand that kills. You must remember this word, black. An assassin has always been illusory. It is faintly discernible and vanishes into nothingness. What is considered a successful assassin? If no one knows that an assassin's hands are stained with blood until the day he dies, then he is a successful assassin. Then, what is considered a qualified super-assassin? A qualified assassin is able to conceal himself under any circumstances. When he is with a scholar, he is a literary man. When he is with a painter, he is an artist. When he is with a gangster, he is a scoundrel. When he is with a lady, he is a nobleman, a gentleman. When he is with a pervert, he is a lecher. When he is with a hero, he is a role model. In the desert, he is a lizard. When he is on the prairie, he is the king of wolves. When he is in the mountains, he is the king of beasts, the fierce tiger. When he is floating in the sea, he is the dragon that stirs up the winds and waves. Only in this way can he be a qualified and successful assassin. If he only knows how to kill, at best, he is just a butcher. If he only kills for the sake of his goal, even if he succeeds every time, he can only be considered as an excellent assassin. Killing, that itself is a kind of art. As an assassin, you must never taint the elegance of this art. This was a conversation between June Xie and his master in his previous life. As he thought about it, the corners of June Xie's mouth revealed a trace of a smile. He murmured, "Let me add one more point. Being born in this kind of family, I am just a useless second generation." Suddenly, a cold voice said, "Wrong. You are not a second generation. I am the second generation, and you are the third generation." Chapter 4. My new book is in a difficult situation. I am calling for my brothers and sisters to return. Feng Ling needs your help and support. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded, "Wrong. You are not a second-generation ancestor. I am the second-generation ancestor, and you are the third-generation ancestor." A wheelchair appeared before June Xie's eyes. A thin middle-aged man in his 30s reclined upon the wheelchair. Both his legs were covered with a thick satin cloth. His pair of turbid yet clear eyes stared at Jun Xie with a playful expression. His eyebrows were like swords, slanting to his temples. Naturally, there was an inexplicable coldness and killing intent emanating from him. His eyes were like those of an eagle, and there was a hint of disdain in the depth of his eyes. Although it wasn't much, it was very obvious. If this person wasn't crippled, he would be a handsome man. He was a true hero with an iron backbone. From the aura of power that remained in his eyebrows, he must have been a decisive general who commanded thousands of troops. Third uncle? Jun Xie stopped walking. Jun Moxie looked at his third uncle Jun Wui, who was seated in a wheelchair. In his original memories, this third uncle of his was a wheelchair-bound person who could not do anything, a cripple who could only eat and await his death, completely useless. However, at this moment, Jun Xie could sense a familiar aura coming from this third uncle who had been seated in a wheelchair all year round. This aura caused one's hair to stand on end. Murderous aura. It was a murderous aura that could even move Jun Xie. Only an iron-blooded soldier who had been through hundreds of battles and killed his way through mountains of corpses and seas of blood could have such a unique sharpness. It was like a peerless sword that would never be buried by the dust even if it was broken. It was emitting an aggressive light. However, this peerless sword was hidden in its sheath. Throughout Jun Xie's life, he had only seen 2 or 3 people like this, and any one of them was an important person who controlled a large army. In fact, these iron-blooded generals were the people that Jun Xie admired the most in his previous life. As a matter of fact, Grandpa Jun was also a first-rate character. However, as he grew older, his self-cultivation had reached the point of returning to the simple and unadorned state. Thus, Jun Xie had only interacted with Grandpa Jun for a short period of time, causing him to overlook this. However, Jun Wui had not reached the stage of concealing his strength and biding his time. His whole person was like a sharp sword in a sheath. Although the sharpness was hidden, the awe-inspiring sword aura was still leaking out. Of course, only Jun Xie's eyesight could distinguish it. Ordinary people like Jun Moxie would not be able to distinguish it even if they were beaten to death. Although the peerless treasured sword was lying idle in the case and hanging empty on the wall, the deep roar of a dragon could still be heard in the silent night. This was a kind of bloodthirst in their bones. "It's rare for you to call me third uncle." Jun Wui raised his head and looked at his only nephew with a hint of ridicule in his deep eyes. "Emo Xie, are you interested in becoming a second-generation ancestor?" After saying that, he suddenly sighed and thought to himself, "What's wrong with me today? Why do I have the mood to talk to a pile of mud that can't even support the wall?" Jun Xie looked at him for a long time, but his gaze was focused on his crippled waist and legs. Then, he suddenly laughed. "Third uncle, you must be joking. You are a genuine second-generation ancestor. At best, I am only a third-generation ancestor. This nephew is already very satisfied with being a peaceful and happy third-generation ancestor." Why is this kid speaking in such a tone today? Although there is a sting in his words, there is no trace of his usual arrogance and despotism. Jun Xie's answer was out of Jun Wui's expectations. Jun Wui's eyes widened. A sharp glint flashed out from his eyes, like a dazzling bolt of lightning piercing through the hazy night sky. He suddenly laughed and shook his head. He said, "Do you know the difference between a second-generation ancestor and a third-generation ancestor? Aren't they all just eating and waiting to die? Is there a difference?" Jun Xie raised his eyebrows. There was a sting in his words. Seeing the flash of lightning in Jun Wui's eyes, Jun Xie felt that such an iron-blooded man would be a great regret in the world if he were to be depressed like this. A trace of bitterness and unwillingness flashed in Jun Wui's eyes, but it quickly disappeared. His clean right hand touched his crippled leg. He raised his head and said, "This is nonsense. How is there no difference? The difference between the two is as far as the sky and the earth. A second-generation ancestor is someone whose father's generation has conquered the world, and the younger generation can just sit back and enjoy the fruits of their labor. There is no difficulty at all. As long as one has a mouth that knows how to eat, he will definitely not die. At the very least, he can enjoy a lifetime of glory and wealth. However, the so-called third-generation ancestor is different. He looked into Jun Xie's eyes and laughed. He retorted, the so-called third-generation ancestor does not necessarily refer to the third generation. It is the third generation's successor. In other words, the grandfather's generation has conquered the world, but there is a gap in the father's generation. This is what it means to be a third-generation ancestor. If your father is still alive, then you and I should both be second-generation ancestors. It is just that I am counting from your grandfather's generation, and you are counting from your father's generation. There is only a difference here. But your grandfather is old now. So even if you have the heart to be a third-generation ancestor, I am afraid you will not be able to be a third-generation ancestor for long. Above you, besides your grandfather, there is no other big tree for you to rely on. So, I am afraid your future as a third-generation ancestor will be very difficult. If you want to be a qualified third-generation ancestor, you must have some ability and scheming. So, this second-generation ancestor is luckier than you, a third-generation ancestor. Jun Wui said this to counter Jun Xie's words of eating and waiting for death. But as he spoke, he could not help but feel a sense of desolation in his heart. Is this the end of the great Jun family? The Jun family that was once at its peak, and the other countries did not dare to look at it directly, had now fallen to such a state. His eldest brother and second brother had died in the battlefield, and he was crippled. The only two nephews that he had any hope for were also killed in the battlefield, and not even their bones were left. The Jun family's bloodline was only left with this good-for-nothing Jun Moxie. Suddenly, Jun Wuyi's interest disappeared, and he felt bored to death. In fact, he didn't even wish to speak. Jun Xie was silent. Then, he suddenly smiled and said, "Actually, I can also be a second-generation ancestor." How could Jun Xie not understand Jun Wuyi's words? The reason why he wanted Jun Wui to say these words was because of his next words. Jun Wui coughed twice, and asked with interest and some laziness, "Oh, if third uncle can be a big tree for me, and support me with a piece of shade, can't I still be a second-generation ancestor?" Jun Xie said with a smile. Jun Wui's eyes flashed with a trace of anger, and he said in a low voice, "Mo Xie, are you mocking your third uncle again?" Jun Xie looked at him, and suddenly said, "Can you still feel your legs?" "No." Jun Wui turned his head to the side, and in his heart, he hated this nephew of his more and more. He clearly knew that it was taboo for him to mention his disability, but he mentioned it again and again. Previously, he finally mentioned it vaguely, but now he was asking directly. Such a descendant who did not know how to respect his elders, it was better to have no descendants. "Did your waist bone break before?" "No." Jun Wui was furious. "You bastard, if my waist bone was broken, would I still be alive today?" In other words, third uncle, at most, your meridians were damaged? Were you attacked by someone? Jun Xie's eyes lit up. It seemed that his meridians were cut off, or eroded by a sinister martial art, causing his meridians to wither. If that was really the case, as long as his qi and blood were not deficient, there was still some hope. With his medical skills, there should be a chance to save him. No matter what, they were blood relatives in this life, and what moved Jun Xie was the outstanding sharpness of an iron-blooded man. Jun Xie felt that since he had the ability, he should let such an iron-blooded man stand up, regardless of whether he was his own third uncle or not. Jun Xie looked at him, and slowly said, "I heard that you were injured on the battlefield, but this kind of sneaky attack on the battlefield is much more difficult than killing you directly. Why is it like this? Is it that your old enemy deliberately messed with you, so that you become like this? His words stabbed his sore spot. Jun Wui clenched his teeth, and the blue veins on his forehead bulged a few times. He panted a few times, and finally managed to control his excitement and said coldly, "What does this have to do with you?" Knowing that he had guessed correctly, Jun Xie smiled proudly, and reached out to hold the wheelchair. He moved his head closer, and mysteriously said, "Third uncle, do you want to take revenge? I look like this, how can I talk about revenge?" Jun Wui's thin face showed a trace of redness, and the expression in his eyes changed, and the light of extreme hatred appeared. After a long time, he sighed and said, "Now, I'm just a useless person." Jun Xie smiled, and softly said, "What if I have the ability to let third uncle stand up again?" This sentence was like a sudden clap of thunder. Chapter 5. Jun Xie's words may have been spoken in a low voice, but in Jun Wui's ears, it was no different from a sudden clap of thunder. Suddenly, Jun Wui's eyes widened, and a layer of yellow light appeared on his body. It was so majestic that no one dared to look at him. His body exuded an unusually powerful aura, and he grabbed Jun Xie's arm. "Emo Xie, don't tell me you have a way to cure me?" It seemed that Jun Wui had been recuperating all these years, and had never stopped practicing his Xian Qi. This layer of yellow light indicated that he was already an Earth Xian expert. Although he was only at the primary level, but considering his age, it was already very commendable. How many Earth Xian experts were there in the entire Tianxiang city? Jun Wui was able to rush to the Earth Xian realm at the age of 30, and could be said to be a genius. Not to mention that his lower body's meridians were severely flawed, and if the flaw was not there, then his strength was bound to enter a higher and more profound level. Jun Xie's arm made a caw-caw sound as it was almost torn apart by Jun Wui's powerful grip, but his face was indifferent, as if it wasn't his own flesh, and he didn't feel the slightest bit of pain. He smiled and said, "There's not much hope, but we can give it a try." Jun Wui suddenly came to his senses, and quickly let go of his hand. He looked at his own hand, and a puzzled look appeared on his face as he looked at Jun Xie. "You don't feel pain? Why don't you scream?" "It hurts," Jun Xie said indifferently. "Do you think it won't hurt if I scream?" "If it doesn't hurt, then I'll definitely scream, but unfortunately I can't." Seeing the indifference on Jun Xie's face, Jun Wui was startled, and looked at him deeply. Then, he suddenly laughed heartily. "Ha ha, now I actually believe that you have the ability to cure me. This nephew of mine seems to be different from before." Jun Wui secretly said to himself. "What you need to do now is to have someone massage your whole body every morning, noon, and night. It would be best if it's someone with a foundation in martial arts. Massage along your meridians and don't miss a single spot. Then, every night, soak your body in boiling water for 2 hours without interruption. After a period of time, I'll make some preparations and start the treatment. What do you think?" Jun Xie smiled. Jun Wui's emotions slowly calmed down and he said heavily, "All right. Emo Xie, third uncle, I'll trust you this once." Slowly clenching his fists, Jun Wui said slowly, "Even if it doesn't work out, I'll accept it." There was one sentence that he didn't say, "Even if you're playing with me, I'll accept it." A glimmer of hope was better than none. "All these years, third uncle, didn't you seek treatment from a doctor?" Jun Xie was a little puzzled. After examining Jun Wui, he found that Jun Wui's situation was really not optimistic. The meridians in his waist had been completely sealed, and there seemed to be some kind of evil drug slowly eroding the meridians in his body. If it wasn't for the good maintenance, his muscles would have completely withered by now, and then he would be completely crippled, with no possibility of recovery. However, for this kind of illness, if there was a skilled doctor, even if he couldn't treat the illness, he should be able to see it. Not only that, almost all the famous doctors in the empire have come to see me. My meridians have been sealed by an insidious method, and I've been secretly poisoned with a very strange nameless poison, making me unable to live, unable to die. Jun Wui said hatefully, Father has tried a few times, but he still couldn't undo the insidious meridian sealing method. As for the nameless poison, it's even more incurable. The only thing he can do is to use the strongest Xian Qi to force it out, and this may be the only way to cure me. Then why? Jun Xie stopped halfway through his question. The person who plotted against me was already a heaven-level expert 10 years ago. In order to undo the seal and force out the poison, it would require the full strength of a supreme divine-level expert. And a supreme divine-level expert is an invincible existence in the legends, and usually they are elusive, rarely seen. What's more, after treating my injuries, the supreme divine-level expert who treated me will lose half of his strength, and will never be able to recover. Jun Wui laughed bitterly. Which supreme divine-level expert would make such a big sacrifice for me? Mo Xie, cultivating to the supreme divine level is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Who would cut off half of their own cultivation for someone else? How ruthless! To let you know that there's hope of treatment, but it's equivalent to no hope. Jun Xie shook his head and sighed. It seems that this person hates you very much. He used such an insidious method to torture you. I'm afraid that his goal is to make you beg for death. She paused for a moment and then suddenly asked, Is that person an enemy of my Jun family? Mo Xie, where did you learn about the method to treat me? In response to Jun Xie's question, Jun Wui's eyes flashed with pain, and he deliberately avoided mentioning it. He only looked at Jun Xie and looked him up and down. Why do you seem to be a different person today? Third uncle's illness is actually on my mind day and night. Jun Xie broke into a sweat and said, I also accidentally found out about a folk prescription, and it's very effective. I wanted to give it a try. Third uncle, don't say such unorthodox words. To be honest, I hope that third uncle will get better soon, and it's also for my own sake. I hope that under third uncle's protection, I can live a safe and stable life as a second-generation ancestor. I'm just that honest. Haha. Brat. Jun Wui laughed and scolded. Suddenly, his expression became solemn and he said, Mo Xie, whether or not it succeeds, third uncle will be indebted to you. These words were said in a powerful and resonant voice. Third uncle, just wait for me and let me live as a second-generation ancestor, haha. Jun Xie checked again, and his heart was filled with confidence. As long as I can train back some of the internal energy from my previous life, and combine it with my unique acupuncture technique, I can find the other 2 sets of medicinal herbs, and use these 3 methods to treat Jun Wui's injury. The reason why he asked Jun Wui to use those methods to slowly recover was mostly Jun Xie's excuse. Because up until now, he still did not have the slightest bit of internal energy. On the other hand, piercing with golden needles required the support of exquisite internal energy. Jun Wui's eyes lit up, and he heard the strong confidence in Jun Xie's words. He smiled and said, Mo Xie, you only have a 3rd-grade Xian Qi cultivation, and even if you're not much stronger than an ordinary person, you were able to withstand the strength of my grasp. Even your face didn't change. This kind of endurance is not that of an ordinary second-generation ancestor. That grasp just now, even though he did not use his full strength. But how could an ordinary person withstand the grasp of an Earth Xian expert? Even a Gold Xian expert would frown in the face of such an attack. However, Jun Xie, who was obviously only at the 3rd level of Xian Qi, was able to withstand it. He did not even use his own Xian Qi to resist it. Jun Wui was well aware of how much pain he had to endure, and he was able to withstand the grasp in a situation where he was defenseless, but his face didn't change at all. This temperament, what a pity! Looking at Jun Xie, Jun Wui sighed in his heart. It's a pity that Jun Xie is already quite old, and even if he can endure hardships, it's impossible for him to practice high-level Xian Qi in this lifetime. Otherwise, with his perseverance, I'm afraid that the June family may really produce a powerful expert. Brothers, we're still short of 3 names on the list of new books on the front page. Feng Ling's requirements are not high. I just hope that Jun Xie can stand on the list of new books today. I hope that the brothers will raise their hands and vote for us, so that our evil monarch can take another step forward. I'm counting on the brothers. Even if it's just 1 vote, Feng Ling will be grateful. Please. Thank you. Chapter 6. Third uncle, regarding your illness, especially those who will give you a full body massage, you must use people you trust. It's best not to let others know about it. If by any chance things go awry, you and I will lose face. After thinking about it, Jun Xie cautiously warned. Haha, third uncle won't tell anyone even if I'm cured. Your third uncle isn't a fool. You're afraid that it will bring you trouble, right? Besides, if you can cure my waist and legs, both you and I will be an excellent trump card for the Jun family. How could I not know this? You little devil, you're dragging third uncle's face into this. Jun Wui laughed and pinched his face. He was suddenly startled. This kid used to be my most beloved nephew. How long has it been since I've been so intimate with him? Perhaps it's because I haven't been close to him for a long time. That's why I feel so strange when I see him today. Could it be that he's hiding another face after so many years of being a debauchee? Jun Wui looked at Jun Xie's back as he turned around and walked away. He couldn't help but feel a faint sense of expectation. He was looking forward to his injury being cured. He was even more looking forward to seeing if his nephew really had another side to him. Third uncle, you're already in Earth Xian, right? Jun Xie asked with a faint smile. Shifty eyes. Jun Wui chuckled. He felt incomparably carefree and said, I've just entered this realm this year. I haven't stabilized it yet. Modest. Jun Xie curled his lips. What about above Earth Xian? Jun Wui's face changed as he said, Xian Qi is divided into 9 levels. Above the 9 levels are silver, gold, and jade. The levels stop there. Above them are Earth Xian, Tian Xian, and Supreme Shin Xian. From the 1st to the 3rd grade, the appearance of Xian Qi is light red, pink, and bright red. From the 4th to the 6th grade, purple, also divided into 3 stages. From the 7th to the 9th grade, black. Xie, if you go out, you must look carefully. Once you make a mistake, you will suffer greatly. Yes, third uncle, I understand. Jun Xie smiled calmly. Jun Wui was in a good mood. He recited slowly. The silver Xian begins, the golden Xian rises, the Yu Xian opens and wills, all under the 9 Xian are ants. The earth Xian splits, the Tian Xian is empty, the supreme Shen Xian is invisible. As soon as he enters the 9 heavens he turns into a dragon. This is the celestial Qi ranking song. Only at the silver Xian realm could it be considered as the beginning. As for you, Jun Wui looked at Jun Xie. His eyes were very gentle. You have your own path. A man does not necessarily have to kill with his own hands. Jun Xie smiled. I know I usually do not kill. He added in his heart, I will not kill without paying the price. But there is one condition. Do not provoke me. Right now, Jun Xie was not interested in Xian Qi, so he did not try to understand it. After sending Jun Wui back to his room, Jun Xie slowly walked back, but halfway through, he turned around and went into the library. The reason why he walked into this place was because the previous Jun Sunshao had too little information in his head. Aside from sensual pleasures, eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling, there was basically nothing else in his head. Even if Jun Xie wanted to sort out any useful information, he would not be able to, so he needed to spend some time to sort out everything in his head. At the very least, he needed to clear up the information in this Jun Sunshao's head. Even if there was not much useful information in it, at least he needed to understand everything about the Jun family. After Jun Xie entered the library, he did not come out for an entire day. Master, after young master left your place, He only talked with Third Master for a while in the courtyard. From the looks of it, Third Master seemed to be very happy. In recent years, it is very rare to see Third Master this happy. In Jun Jean Tian's study, an old man bowed in front of Jun Jean Tian, reporting Jun Xie's whereabouts. Jun Jean Tian's face, which was as calm as an ancient well, showed a look of astonishment. This uncle and nephew pair had always been incompatible like fire and water for the past few years. Whenever they met, they would mock and ridicule each other. No matter how they looked at each other, they would always find each other displeasing to the eye. Why were they chatting together today? Moreover, they were chatting happily? For Jun Jean Tian to actually be happy, this was too unexpected. It could even be said to be strange. What were they talking about? Jun Jean Tian took a sip of tea and asked in a seemingly casual manner. In recent years, Third Master has been crippled, but not crippled. His Xian Qi cultivation has improved tremendously, and he has already reached the early stage of the Earth rank. This subordinate did not dare to get too close, so I did not hear the content of their conversation. I only saw that Third Master and Young Master were indeed very happy, and seemed to be chatting very congenially. The old man replied respectfully. Congenially? Jun Jean Tian blew his beard. How is that possible? It is already a great thing that the two of them have been together for a long time and no one has died. How could they actually be congenial? This matter is absolutely true. Master, after Young Master and Third Master parted ways, he went straight to the library and has yet to come out. There are very few external objects in the library, so it should be fine. On the contrary, Young Master and Third Master seem to be chatting happily. This is really unusual. I will report this matter to Master as soon as possible. You did the right thing, but that kid went to the library? Jun Jean Tian's beard trembled and his eyes widened. Are you sure you are not wrong? That little bastard Jun Moxie actually went to the library? And not the likes of the Myriad Flower Pavilion or the Drifting Fragrance Pavilion. The old man nodded vigorously. It is the library. That's right, Master. Jun Jean Tian stood up and paced back and forth in the room. His usual calm and elegant demeanor was nowhere to be seen. Pulling his beard, he frowned and pondered. Old Peng, what do you think this guy went to the library for? Suddenly, he was startled. Could it be that he went to set fire to the library? Young Master was reading in there and was very quiet. I was afraid that he would not leave for a while, so I came back with a peace of mind. Old Peng's mouth twitched and he wanted to laugh. Reading? Grandpa Jun cried out in alarm. He pulled out a strand of his beard, as if he was unaware of it. He grinned and said, You're really reading a book? Yes, Master. After pondering for a while, Jun Jean Tian waved his hand. Reading is a good thing. Then don't disturb him for the time being. After he leaves, bring me all the books he has read. I want to see what he is up to. Is he looking for a prostitute? Even if he is looking for a prostitute, it doesn't matter. The kid has grown up, looking at those things is not a big deal. Back then, cough cough, old Peng, forbid anyone to disturb that kid. Yes, Master. Jun Jean Tian paced around twice and looked up at the sky. His beard curled up as he pondered. If it is not spring, could it be that this kid really woke up and turned over a new leaf? Shaking his head, he let out a long sigh. If that is the case, then this old man will really have to burn incense and pray to the ancestors. When night fell, the housekeeper, old Peng, went to collect the books that Jun Xie had read. Surprisingly, he came back with dozens of books. Jun Jean Tian placed one book after another on the table and frowned. Xian Continent's Wind and Clouds, Records of the Continent, Records of the Continent's Mountains and Rivers, List of the Most Influential People, Illustrated Records of the Exotic Flowers and Rare Herbs, On the Continent's War, Xian Art of War. Hiss! Grandpa Jun spent the whole night flipping through the books that his grandson had read. His expression was one of bewilderment and surprise. He would often sigh and exhale, shake his head and nod his head. It was estimated that half of his life's worth of expressions had been used up in one night. Chapter 7. For the next few days, Jun Xie still did not go out. Waking up in the morning, he went straight to the library and stayed there for the whole day. Without exception, Grandpa Jun would bring over all the books he had read and analyze them again. Then, he would shake his head, nod his head, sigh, exhale, be at a loss, then be pleasantly surprised. It turns out that he had not used up all his expressions. In addition, the servants of the Jun family discovered that this young master had another strange hobby. During the day, he would enter the library and not come out. But at night, he would sit in the courtyard. Wherever the light was the darkest, he would sit there. Really evil. However, the servants did not mind it too much. Compared to this young master's previous behavior, his current behavior was much better. That night, Jun Xie once again sat under a flowering tree, enjoying the darkness of the night where he could not even see his own fingers. A sense of security suddenly rose within his heart. Yes, it was security. For Jun Xie, the king of assassins, the safest place was the darkness of the night. Only the darkness of the night was Jun Xie's best and most reliable companion in his previous life. Looking up at the starry sky, Jun Xie suddenly felt as if he was dreaming. These few days, he had roughly read through a large number of books related to this world. More or less, he understood the situation of this continent. However, the more he understood, the more confused Jun Xie became. If not for the black and white records, Jun Xie would have thought that he had transmigrated back to the ancient times of China. It was too similar. The same skin color, the same accent, the similar culture, and the same clothing as the Tang and Song dynasties in China. Jun Xie groaned and stuck his head between his legs. His two hands hugged the back of his head tightly as he thought in pain. Why? Why is it not some ancient era of China? If that was the case, how many advantages and resources would I have? Even if I did not take the initiative to change the course of history, I could still use this ability to predict the future and avoid calamity. Xian continent, what kind of a place is this? Gold Xian, Yin Xian, Earth Xian, Tian Xian. Xian Qi. Xian your grandpa. Why wasn't it internal martial arts? The only similarity was perhaps the eternal sun and moon, as well as the gentle fog of the dark night. Only these could give Jun Xie the familiar feeling of being in his homeland of Huaxia. Jun Xie's face was as cold and hard as a stone. The muscles on his cheeks bulged painfully. He had the urge to point at the heavens and curse. Suddenly, at this moment, due to Jun Xie's extreme agitation, he suddenly felt an intense headache. Even with Jun Xie's unimaginable endurance, he suddenly couldn't bear it. He let out a muffled groan and felt lightheaded. Then, he suddenly felt the world spinning in his eyes. The entire world seemed to be spinning violently. Even the misty night seemed to have turned into scattered mist. The entire world suddenly became so illusory and unreal. Jun Xie panted in pain and clenched his teeth tightly. His lips were already stained with blood and his eyes were almost bulging out of their sockets. However, he held himself back and did not let himself make a single sound. Coming to this world alone, all the pain should be borne by himself. In this strange place, I can't rely on anyone. I won't rely on anyone. Kill, 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 kill. Use my killer skills to kill a path of blood. Kill the sky, kill the earth. Kill, 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 kill. While Jun Xie was in a daze, he seemed to feel that a distant light had suddenly appeared in his mind. The light seemed to be far away, but it was slowly approaching. It was getting closer and closer, brighter and brighter, bigger and clearer. Finally, it turned into a colorful pagoda. It spun continuously in his mind, and with every rotation, it shot out a misty holy white light. Every time it spun, it brought upon Jun Xie a pain that was no less than the 18 hells of reincarnation. His body was already numb, his limbs were already numb, and his consciousness was slowly fading. Only Jun Xie's pair of eyes had turned blood-red. He stared at the sky, stared at the earth, stared at this strange world, and did not blink for even a moment. After an unknown amount of time, a gust of cold wind blew past, and Jun Xie suddenly felt cold. The night of early autumn was indeed a little cold. Jun Xie thought to himself. Then, he suddenly woke up. I feel cold, that means I have a feeling. Haven't I already? He abruptly stood up. Only then did he realize that his entire body was soaked in cold sweat, soaking through his clothes several times over. His entire body was wet and uncomfortable. Suddenly, he had a strange feeling of being reborn. He woke up in Jun Moxie's body, and inherited this ownerless body. Or it could be said that it was a kind of transmigration, soul attachment. Jun Xie was only Jun Xie, and after this painful experience, he had truly merged with this body. Jun Xie had also truly become Jun Moxie, the true owner of this body. No longer caring about tidying up the mess on his body, the first thing Jun Xie did was to sit cross-legged, close his eyes, and sink his consciousness into his sea of consciousness, carefully comprehending something. Jun Xie already knew that the huge pain from before was completely caused by the small pagoda that had already merged with his body. Therefore, Jun Xie concluded that there must be something special about the small pagoda. If it was just a simple merging of the body, there would not be such a painful experience, and there must be more strange things. This small pagoda was almost the only thing that Jun Xie relied on to exist. If he did not understand this matter, perhaps Jun Xie would definitely not be satisfied. Jun Xie could clearly feel that in his consciousness, he could actually see a beautiful small pagoda with colorful flowing lights, floating in the air above his sea of consciousness, slowly rotating. Jun Xie could clearly feel that every time the small pagoda rotated one round, the blood in his body would flow clockwise once, again and again, in an endless cycle. What's going on? Jun Xie looked at this small pagoda in bewilderment. This thing was completely beyond common sense, causing Jun Xie, a staunch atheist, to sink into a kind of heartfelt bewilderment. I wonder if I can take a closer look at it? Just as Jun Xie was thinking about this, he suddenly realized that the small pagoda seemed to be slowly enlarging, following which the door of the lowest level suddenly opened, and a thick white fog rushed out with a whoosh. In a split second, Jun Xie's entire consciousness was filled with this white fog. The white fog was so thick that it almost materialized. Jun Xie took a deep breath, and suddenly felt his whole body relaxed, indescribably comfortable. Even his soul had a happy feeling of wanting to sing. Jun Xie looked around, only to find that he did not know when he had arrived at the door of the pagoda. Above his head, there were 3 faintly discernible ancient characters. Hong Jun Pagoda. Jun Xie walked in, and found that it was empty inside, only the dense white fog that seemed to have materialized. Suddenly, the white fog rolled and slowly revealed 2 lines of large characters. Exquisite 9-layered pagoda, number 1 ancient art. Then, the white fog rolled more urgently, and suddenly, a hazy mnemonic chant appeared in Jun Xie's consciousness. Just as Jun Xie was startled, an uncountable number of characters and diagrams suddenly spun violently in front of his eyes, and then forcefully poured into his consciousness like a force-fed duck. It was like a speeding train suddenly rushing into a small thatched cottage. Moreover, there was no movement after rushing in a split second. Jun Xie could not help but feel dizzy, and his head felt as if it was about to explode, and he fell to the ground. When he opened his eyes, he discovered that he was still lying on the wet and cold ground. But, in his mind, a cultivation technique was clearly appearing, and accompanying it was a diagram of the human body, as well as a human figure's movements. Art of unlocking heaven's fortune, Jun Xie muttered. His eyes flashed, and his fists unconsciously clenched. Brothers, you are very good, very strong. In a day, you have caught up from 15th place to 8th place. Feng Ling was extremely grateful. Thank you. And very proud. My brothers and sisters are indeed the strongest. Next, let us continue to work hard and continue to climb up. Haha. Thanks to Young Fat, Immortal Slaughter, Golden Sands Smuff, Two Snakes, Loneliness, Dechin's Little Soldier, and other authors for their support and tips. Thanks to Fated Fate, Muz, Bookfriend 146999605, Lin Lang Wu, Mortal Worlds Jean Lin, Ignorant Youth, Love in the Morning Moon, and other brothers and sisters for their tips. Thank you all. Feng Ling will work hard. Everyone, please wait and see. During the new book period, there is not enough essence to use, so I can only make up for it next week for my brothers and sisters. Please don't mind. Chapter 8. Jun Xie knew that he had come across an incomparably rare chance encounter due to fate. This art of unlocking heaven's fortune is so mysterious, its effects must be extraordinary. And this 9-story exquisite pagoda must be an incredible treasure. No matter how ignorant Jun Xie may be, he had at least heard of China's legendary ancestor Hong Jun. According to legend, this great deity was the master of the 3 great deities, Taoist Lord Taishang, Yuanshi Tianzuan and Tongtian Jiaozhu. Those 3 were extremely powerful characters. Since this pagoda was named Ancestor Hong Jun, how could it be inferior? Jun Xie almost could not wait to start cultivating this art of unlocking heaven's fortune. However, his mind was calm and he was barely able to restrain himself. Only then did he have the time to examine his body. He could not help but be shocked. He saw that the surface of his skin was covered with a layer of black, sticky and disgusting substance. It was also emitting a nauseating stench. There was actually a thick layer of it. A term that only existed in legends suddenly appeared in Jun Xie's mind. Meridian cleansing? Could it be that after experiencing this pain, I managed to expel all the impurities from my body? Jun Xie suddenly became wild with joy. If he had known that there would be such an effect, then he could have endured a little more pain just now. Admittedly, with Jun Xie's temperament, as long as he could improve his strength, suffering some pain was nothing. Even if the pain was unbearable, it did not matter. Jun Xie excitedly stood up. Enduring the stench emanating from his body, he ran to the side of his house's pond and jumped in with a plop. Suddenly, several voices shouted at the same time. "Who is it?" Jun Xie snorted and said, "It's me. The young master wants to take a bath. No one is allowed to disturb me." "Oh, so it's the young master." In the study, Grandpa Jun frowned. What was that sound? The housekeeper, old Pang, quickly went out and returned. He bowed and said, "It's the young master. He said he jumped into the moon-setting lake to take a bath." Take a bath? Jumping into Luoyue Lake to take a bath in the middle of the night? Grandpa Jun was so angry that his nose became crooked and his voice nearly went out of tune. He was so angry that he suddenly roared. That evil creature! Then, he flicked his sleeves and went to sleep. For the past few days, she had been hoping that her grandson would turn over a new leaf. Now, she felt an indescribable discomfort in her chest. Such is the way of the world. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. Grandpa Jun really wished that he could grab that evil creature and beat him until his buttocks were covered with peach blossoms. He wanted this disappointing grandson to know why the flowers were so red. Jun Xie quietly floated on the surface of the water. His whole body was lying flat on the surface of the water. He only relied on his hands and feet to gently move from time to prevent his body from sinking. After completely washing away the thick layer of filth on his body, Jun Xie felt as though he had just crawled out from a cesspool, feeling refreshed. The only regretful thing was that even though he had truly become one with this body, his cultivation was still far from reaching the level where he could use inner vision. It was even less comparable to his past life. However, to be able to expel so many impurities from his body in one go, the state of his body's muscles and bones would surely shock him, right? As Jun Xie thought about it, he could not help but smile. The guards in the distance saw their young master floating on the surface of the water, motionless and unable to sink. They could not help but stare with wide eyes. What kind of divine technique is the young master practicing? He is actually floating on the surface of the water? If this was explained according to the cultivation of Xianqi, it would at least be at the level of Yuxian. After soaking for a while, Jun Xie hurriedly came out of the water. His body was indeed refreshed, but what followed was a feeling of weakness, an extreme feeling of weakness. After all, the original Jun Sunshao had practically turned this body into an empty shell. Now that he had gone through such an intense meridian cleansing and marrow cleansing, Jun Xie did not immediately faint. It was already a miracle that he had superhuman willpower. Forcing himself to return to his room, Jun Xie changed into a soft white robe. He picked up the bowl of bird's nest porridge that the cute little lowly courier had brought over, and a playful smile appeared on his face. No matter what world it was, strength was always the most important. A man could have no power, but he could never have no strength that belonged to him. Even in his previous life, Jun Xie had never been so eager to increase his strength. Being alone in this world, Jun Xie felt that the only thing that could make him feel completely at ease was his own strength, a strength that could control the life and death of all living beings. And now, Jun Xie was confident that he had mastered another treasure trove. That mysterious pagoda was Jun Xie's greatest reliance in this life. Jun Xie absolutely did not believe that such a mysterious pagoda only contained the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. There must be other uses, and these uses all had to be slowly unearthed by Jun Xie. Furthermore, the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, which was known as the number one skill since time immemorial, gave Jun Xie even more confidence. How could such a mysterious cultivation method be ordinary? Slowly recalling the circulation route of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune's first stage, great illumination, Jun Xie sat cross-legged on the floor of his room. Mind and spirit as one, he calmed his mind and breathed in and out, slowly circulating the skill. Divine light moves, great illumination, will reaches the 9 heavens, foot on the immortal spring, grasp heaven and earth, heart is a treasure mountain, spirit 9 refinements never fall to the yellow springs. After circulating the skill once, he unexpectedly did not feel anything, nor did he feel the slightest bit of qi. However, Jun Xie was not discouraged, and continued to circulate the skill once more, guarding his mind, not relaxing in the slightest. After an unknown amount of time, Jun Xie had already circulated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune no less than 200 times, but there was still no reaction. His meridians were still lifeless. Sitting cross-legged for such a long time had caused Jun Xie's legs to become numb. Although this body had gone through the meridian cleansing and marrow cleansing, the body's ability to bear the burden had not been fully developed. Even his head felt dizzy, and there were already signs of him fainting. Jun Xie took in another long breath, trying his best to keep his mind clear. His heart was filled with determination. I don't believe that I can't cultivate qi. When it comes to evil, I am number one. Who can be more evil than me, the evil monarch? I don't believe in this evil. I don't believe in any evil. But any evil must believe in me, the evil. I am the evil monarch. I am the true monarch of evil. Once again, he entered into a long period of breathing. After a long time, Jun Xie felt as if his body was no longer listening to his command. All the muscles in his body seemed to have stiffened. Following the circulation route of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune for no less than 300 times, he still did not feel anything. Jun Xie closed his eyes, completely suppressing the exhaustion in his body. In his heart there was only one stubborn belief. One more circulation, one more circulation, one more. Finally, after an unknown amount of time, Jun Xie suddenly felt a faint throbbing in the Niwen Palace on the top of his head, followed by a warm sensation in his meridians. However, the sensation was very weak, and if one did not pay full attention, they would not be able to detect it. This qi was indeed as thin as gossamer, almost faintly discernible, but its essence was abnormally solid. This kind of inner qi was really strange, because for someone who had just started practicing inner qi, even if they could cultivate qi, it would not be so solid. However, at this moment, the muddle-headed Jun Xie was completely unaware of this point. Just as this gossamer thin yet abnormally solid qi appeared, in Jun Xie's sea of consciousness, that little rainbow-colored pagoda suddenly flew up slowly, spinning slowly in the air. Every time it spun, a large amount of dense white fog would spurt out. The white fog slowly floated in the air, and countless white threads that could not be seen by the naked eye suddenly appeared on the surface of Jun Xie's body, slowly seeping into Jun Xie's skin, and seeping into Jun Xie's meridians. Brothers, you are very strong, we are already on the front page. However, the competition for the new books rankings is still very cruel, so everyone should support us. Feng Ling, thank you. Thank you Brother Xian Huan Fan for your reward, thank you Giant 8 Calamity God for your reward, and even more thank you Giant 8 Calamity God for making the cover of our evil monarch. Giant 8 Calamity God is a good person, I wonder how many sisters read his book. Everyone, please give him a good person card as thanks, haha. The cover is a picture of Ling Tian's character that I found in Ling Tian's bookstore by a brother called Kale One Well. Thank you brother, thank you very much. Chapter 9. At this moment, Jun Xie was still as muddle-headed as before, without any surprise or joy. He continued to circulate his energy, as if he had not noticed anything. Speaking of which, the art of unlocking heaven's fortune was indeed mysterious and unfathomable. It was the best cultivation technique since ancient times. However, the heavenly Tao had its basis. Cultivation itself was in defiance of the heavens, and it tested one's temperament the most. This cultivation technique was the most difficult to cultivate. Apart from requiring great perseverance and indomitable will, it also required great luck. Thus, since ancient times, even if there were people who had the opportunity to cultivate the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, there were very few who succeeded. Think about it, if it was an ordinary person with a weak mind, they would probably give up after hundreds of circulations. After all, this kind of dullness was not something an ordinary person could endure. Furthermore, if one's soul was slightly weaker, they would not be able to persevere. For a freak like Jun Xie, who could circulate hundreds of thousands of circulations in one breath, to those who had no experience in cultivation, it was simply unheard of. Even if someone had this kind of perseverance, they would still go berserk in the process because their divine sense was not strong enough. However, Jun Xie had met all the requirements to cultivate the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. Jun Xie was an extremely tenacious person. Once he set his mind on something, he would never change his mind. To put it nicely, this kind of character was stubborn. To put it bluntly, he was stubborn and would not turn back until he hit the wall. But Jun Xie was someone who would not turn back even if he hit the wall and broke through it. Now that he was cultivating the most difficult art of unlocking heaven's fortune, it was like a tortoise going out and meeting a turtle. It turned out that everyone was a family. Apart from his character, Jun Xie's own luck also played a large role. The Hongjun Pagoda was Jun Xie's greatest luck. Without the protection of a great opportunity, he would not have any hope of entering the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. In addition, Jun Xie was a soul that had transmigrated, so his divine sense was not weak. With the help of the Hongjun Pagoda, his divine sense was even stronger than Jun Moxi's. All these factors had allowed him to break through the first hurdle in one night. Not only was this achievement unprecedented, It would probably never be repeated. The Niwen palace at the top of his head began to throb more and more violently. In the end, it began to throb rhythmically and became hotter and hotter. Jun Xie's fair face slowly turned red. He sat there until the wee hours of the morning, when the sky was just beginning to brighten. Jun Xie could clearly feel that the thread-like qi circulating in his body was becoming more and more lively, gradually forming a line. Just as the last link of this fine line was connected, Jun Xie suddenly felt a myriad of colors flashing before his eyes. It was as though all the flowers in the world had suddenly bloomed before his eyes. All of the 7 colored clouds surrounded him. At the same time, it was as though thunder was rumbling above his head. In an instant, lightning flashed and thunder roared, creating a rumbling sound. However, Jun Xie's eyes were still closed. In other words, all of this was happening in his mind. This was the first difficulty of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune: calm the heart. Although Jun Xie clearly saw these strange scenes, he still firmly remembered that when he was cultivating, his eyes were always closed. In other words, he should not have been able to see it, but now he could see it. What did this mean? This meant that all of this was an illusion. Therefore, Jun Xie did not care at all. He guarded the little bit of clarity in his mind and continued to cultivate, not caring about anything. Boom! Like a bomb, it suddenly exploded in Jun Xie's mind. Jun Xie's body trembled, suddenly feeling as if he had lost his weight. His spirit floated, and with a wuss sound, he spat out a mouthful of blood far away. Then, he fainted. This mouthful of blood spat out on the snow-white bedsheet. It was a strange jet-black color, as if it was a solid substance. It did not flow and looked like a piece of black charcoal. Jun Xie's unconscious body slowly twitched, and droplets of jet-black liquid slowly seeped out of his skin, slowly soaking Jun Xie's soft white robe bit by bit, turning it black. This was the true meaning of meridian cleansing. The impurities that seeped out of his body previously were only the removal of most of the impurities from his skin and muscles. What was being removed now was the true impurities from within his bones. As for the jet-black blood that Jun Xie spat out, it was the impurities in his internal organs. It was also the most difficult impurities to be removed from the human body. Jun Xie's current condition, in the words of a cultivator, was the transcending mortality realm. In other words, from now on, he had broken away from the shackles of a mortal body, and had officially stepped into the ranks of cultivators. It must be known that every cultivator who reached the transcending mortality realm had to go through a rather painful and long process. It could take a few months for the shortest to several years or even decades for the longest. There were even some who would not be able to reach this realm in their entire lives. But Jun Xie had actually only achieved it for one night. This was truly a miracle among miracles. If word of this got out, no cultivator would be willing to believe it. Of course, this was not because of Jun Xie's special physique, nor was it because of Jun Xie's powerful mental strength. There was naturally another reason, and the most important reason was the white mist. It was the purest spiritual qi of heaven and earth to begin with. It was just that Jun Xie was not aware of it at this time. Although Jun Xie was a martial arts expert in his previous life, he had never come into contact with the realm of cultivators. In fact, to his knowledge, the so-called cultivation of immortals was simply nonsense. Therefore, even if he clearly knew of the changes in his body, he would only think that he had some great luck. When Jun Xie woke up again, he found himself in a large wooden tub. His entire body was surrounded by warm water, and there were 2 soft little hands diligently scrubbing his body. When he opened his eyes, he saw that the little handmaiden Ku'er's hair was also soaked in sweat, and her face was flushed red from the heat. She was holding a soft towel in her small hand, and she was panting as she washed her body. Her small lips were tightly pursed, and her face was filled with an expression of embarrassment. Her pair of pretty eyes deliberately looked above her head, and only when she needed to change a place to scrub would she lower her head to take a look, but then she would immediately move her eyes away. The little girl's shy expression is really too cute. With this thought, Jun Xie immediately returned to his senses, and only then did he realize that he was actually naked. He could not help but feel a little embarrassed, and dryly coughed twice, saying, "It's better if I do it myself." As he said that, he reached out to take the towel from Ku'er's hands. With a scream, Ku'er grabbed the towel and retreated far away. She trembled as she looked at Jun Xie, and her eyes were filled with panic. "Why, Young? Master, why you're awake?" Sighing helplessly, Jun Xie said, "If I'm not awake, could it be that you're talking to a ghost?" "Ghost?" Ku'er screamed again, and Jun Xie suddenly realized that he could clearly see the little girl's fine hair standing on end. Her little face was deathly pale, as if she had really seen a ghost. Jun Xie could not help but sigh. "Stop screaming. Even if you really saw a ghost, it would not be the same expression you have now. Your acting is really on point." Bang! The door was suddenly slammed open, and a burly figure strode in. "Emo Xie, you're awake? What happened?" It was Jun Tian, and behind him were several guards. Grandpa Jun's voice was very angry, and he had just scolded the 36 guards guarding Jun Xie. Yesterday's incident could be said to be an accident, but he did not expect it to happen again today. Grandpa Jun was so angry that he was about to explode. "Does my Jun family look so easy to bully? It seems that I really have no choice but to show my might. If everyone has their eyes on my grandson, how can I live?" Grandpa Jun thought that Jun Xie's fainting was due to an assassination attempt. "This week, I ran around naked, but my brothers are the strongest. Unexpectedly, you were able to push the evil monarch to the top 5 of the new books list. Thank you. Brothers and sisters, your strength has made my imagination run wild, and I suddenly feel that one more step forward, 2 steps are not too far away, right? Everyone, give it a push and rush forward. How about it? There will be more recommendations next week, and I will update more. Thank you to the brothers Love and the Morning Moon for another reward. Thank you to the brothers Dark Magician, Unstoppable Night and Night, 10 sweets. I am a pure person, the Fool, First Line Army, Book Friend 0804. 2723, 1658. 447, Dream Heart C for their rewards. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Brothers are mighty. Sisters are mighty. Chapter 10. Grandpa Jun naturally did not expect that tonight's abnormality was due to his grandson obtaining a great benefit. There was no assassination attempt. Instead, he blindly thought of other things. When he heard that Jun Xie had gone to Luo Yu Lake to take a bath in the middle of the night, he angrily went to sleep. He did not expect to be woken up by a commotion just as he was sleeping soundly. When he asked, he found out that Jun Xie had encountered a problem. His anger immediately flared up. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm really fine." Jun Xie subconsciously grabbed the towel and covered his crotch, his face full of embarrassment. He was completely naked in the water, but suddenly a dozen men had rushed in. Each of them looked down on him. Even though Jun Xie's skin was very thick and his state of mind was calm enough, he still could not bear it. "What are you covering? What is there to be ashamed of in front of Grandpa with that little thing of yours? I remember when you were a child, Grandpa would hold you with one hand and play with you with the other." Jun Tian's words almost made Jun Xie faint. Behind him, the shoulders of the burly bodyguards were shaking, their hairy faces were red, and they were gasping for breath. Several of them stole glances at the area where the young master was covering. They winked at each other, their eyes filled with eagerness, seemingly eager to compete. Who did this? Jun Tian's face sank like ice and a murderous intent loomed. Jun Xie was a little confused, but he quickly understood. He lowered his head in shame. "I didn't see clearly and I fell down." Useless. Grandpa June scolded angrily, his tone full of disappointment. He carefully looked at his grandson and determined that he was fine. He then lost interest in looking at his grandson's naked body. His grandson's small body did not have the qualities of a descendant of a military family. Even a girl's body was not so white. Humph! Really, he helplessly nodded. You rest well. He turned around and walked out, followed by a group of guards. June Xie heaved a sigh of relief and removed the towel covering his crotch. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. The next day, the old Duke Jun Zhantian lost his temper in the throne room of the emperor. He pointed at the noses of the imperial uncle, grand preceptor, and other relatives of the emperor. He was abnormally agitated, and he threatened that if anyone tried to assassinate his only grandson again, each family would have to pay with their lives. Once the old marshal, who had been silent for 10 years, flipped out, all the civil and military officials kept quiet out of fear. Even the current emperor comforted him softly. However, there were also those who did not know what was good for them. The first prince's father-in-law, the current imperial censor, Song Shi, was originally a newly promoted noble. He had borrowed the first prince's influence to climb to his current position. He did not know much about the old duke, and he was also confident that he had the first prince's backing. Thus, he contradicted Jun Zhantian and complained to His Majesty. However, Jun Zhantian slapped his face like a pig's head and even knocked out 2 of his teeth. The first prince braced himself and came out to mediate, but was kicked in the stomach by the old duke, causing him to roll on the ground like a gourd. Immediately, no one dared to move. In the end, it was His Majesty the Emperor who mediated and personally guaranteed Jun Sunshao's personal safety. Jun Zhantian angrily flicked his sleeves and left. Before he left, he swept his gaze over all the supporters of the first prince, causing their legs to tremble like noodles. The old duke had not shown his might for 10 years. After 10 years of inactivity, the moment he showed his might, it caused all the civil and military officials to immediately piss their pants. He actually dared to fight in the throne room, even daring to make a move against the first prince. What else did he not dare to do? Only His Majesty the Emperor looked at Jun Zhantian's departing figure and sighed in his heart. Jun Zhantian's rage today may have been awe-inspiring, but His Majesty the Emperor already knew that the only surviving third young master of the Jun family had completely disappointed him. Thinking back to when Jun Zhantian had asked him to marry Princess Raimu, now that he thought about it, that was probably Jun Zhantian's last effort to preserve the Jun family's bloodline. But at that time, Jun Zhantian had heartlessly rejected him. If Jun Moxie had even the slightest bit of future prospects, Jun Zhantian would not have flown into such a rage in the throne room. The reason why he had lost control today was because old Master Jun could no longer see any future for the Jun family. Jun Zhantian and the Jun family had countless enemies within and outside the country. If he were to die, none of his enemies would let his descendants off. So old Master Jun did not mind being domineering to the end. Whoever dares to touch my Jun family or my grandson, I will deal with you first. In any case, my Jun family is already like this. Why should I endure humiliation? Could it be that the once illustrious Jun family, the protector of the Tianxiang Empire, will decline just like that? The emperor sighed, suddenly feeling extreme regret in his heart. Perhaps back then I shouldn't have. Witnessing the strength of the old duke, the old subordinates of the military were all beaming with joy. All those who had been secretly plotting against the Jun family also gave up on their original plans. Even the first prince, who had lost face on the spot, did not have any more grievances. Speaking of grievances, he could only blame his father-in-law, who did not know what was good for him and brought disgrace upon himself. Didn't you see that this old thing was already half crazy? Of course, there were still many who felt indignant in their hearts. Could it be that you, old thing, can live forever? Wait until you die, then your June family will go extinct on that day. However, they could only think about it now. In the Tianxiang Empire, there was no one who would have the guts to openly oppose old Master Jun Zhantian while he was still alive. Only, the imperial tutor and Prime Minister Li Shang had been watching from the sidelines, not saying a word. However, after old Master Jun left, he secretly furrowed his brows, and then a smile appeared on his face. It seemed that Jun Zhantian was still very protective of this disappointing grandson of his. Since that was the case, then Jun Moxie was Jun Zhantian's weakness? Such a weakness was too easy to grasp. When a person had such an obvious weakness, no matter how strong that person was, or how strong their background was, there was no need to fear them. In a corner where no one was paying attention, Imperial Tutor Li and General Meng Rufei looked at each other, the corners of their mouths curling into mysterious smiles. Back to the Jun family, in Jun Xie's room. The door closed, and Kuer blushed as she turned to escape. Jun Xie quickly put on his clothes and came before Kuer. He smiled and said, "Open your eyes, it's fine now." Kuer slowly moved her hands a little and peeked out. She found that Jun Xie had indeed put on his clothes. Only then did she feel relieved and put her hands down. Her pretty face blushed and looked very cute. Jun Xie looked at the cute little girl and couldn't help but reach out and gently pat her on the head. Kuer was shocked. When she looked up, she found that Jun Xie's eyes were warm, as if he was a big brother who had seen a little sister. She didn't know why, but her heart calmed down and she was no longer afraid. She thought, the current young master looks quite pleasing to the eye. Just as she thought this, she was shocked again. Why would I think that? He's obviously still that lecherous person, a hedonistic young master. I will never allow him to tarnish my innocence. If he uses force, he will only die. She couldn't help but stubbornly take a step back, her face full of vigilance. Thank you to Giant God Piaoling for your gift. Thank you to Reading Books When You're Bored. And Dumbo for your gifts. Thank you to Nonstop Night and Night and Candy 10 Sweet for your gifts again. By the way, brother Nonstop Night and Night, your middle character seems to be a different character. Hee hee, brothers and sisters are very good and strong. I am proud of you. Chapter 11. Jun Xie had lived 2 lives. In his previous life, he was a top-notch assassin who had experienced the hardships of the world. With just a glance, he could clearly see through the little girl's thoughts. He couldn't help but lament that the original owner of this body didn't even want to see his personal maid. He really was a failure. He sighed and said, "There's no need for you to serve me here. You can leave." Kuer bowed and thought, "As long as I don't come near you, you won't be able to do anything bad. Besides, you've been injured and your body is weak. You won't be able to catch me." Only then did she leave. Jun Xie walked to the window and took a deep breath. He allowed the flow of qi in his body to circulate and examine his body. As soon as he woke up, he found that he was very different from a few days ago. It was just that he didn't have the time to examine it. At this moment, when he examined it carefully, he was immediately shocked. His eyes could clearly see further. Within a radius of 3 zhang, he could even see the legs of an ant on the ground. In his eyes, the entire world seemed to have changed. The trees and grass were all lush and full of vitality. The sun had just risen. Jun Xie stared at the rising sun. For a long time, he didn't feel that it was dazzling. It was just a warm ball of fire. His ears could clearly hear the small insects crawling about in the grass within a few feet. He could even hear the sound of earthworms moving underground. He suddenly felt that this world was incomparably wonderful. He remembered that in his previous life, when his internal energy had greatly improved and entered the Xiantian realm, he only had this wonderful feeling at the moment of breakthrough. Moreover, it didn't have this transcendent state of being one with all things. Jun Xie couldn't help but be wild with joy. Could it be that in just one night, I've once again entered the Xiantian realm? Isn't this too godly? Circulating the chi in his body, he couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. There was still a weak flow of chi in his body, but it was much more coherent. This kind of chi could only be used to cut vegetables, but it couldn't be used to fight. If he had really reached the Xiantian realm, he wouldn't be so weak. But thinking about it, if he hadn't reached the Xiantian realm, how could there be such an amazing effect? This must be the miraculous art of unlocking heaven's fortune. Thinking of this, he was slightly disappointed, but his spirit was even more excited. Jun Xie rolled up his sleeves and looked at them. Was this really a man's arm? His skin was white and tender. Even the arms of a young lady could not compare to his own skin. Jun Xie hurriedly walked in front of the bronze mirror and finally gave up. His face was still the same as before. However, it had clearly become much whiter and more tender. This type of face was the type that Jun Xie hated the most in his past life. A pretty boy, a super pretty boy. Furthermore, it was a pretty boy with an extremely frail body. This was like seeing a ghost. Jun Xie mumbled to himself and could not help but let out a laugh. Coming to this different world is already akin to seeing a ghost. What is so strange about some strange things happening here? But after last night's cultivation and meridian cleansing, he should have a rough idea of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, right? Why was his body still so weak? Thinking about it, he once again inspected his body. This time, Jun Xie was truly shocked. It turned out that if one were to look at his body from the outside, it would appear that his body was extremely weak. In fact, the muscles and tissues within his body were extremely resilient, something that even his past self would not have been able to match up to. Additionally, the quality of his bones and meridians had already reached a very high level. His current body could be said to be blessed by the heavens. He believed that it would be the best carrier for his future advancement in martial arts. Moreover, with his current appearance, no one would be willing to believe that the owner of such a weak body was actually a peerless assassin. It was really an excellent natural disguise. With this thought in mind, Jun Xie naturally continued to practice, hoping to recover his original strength as soon as possible. The following month, something inconceivable happened in the Jun residence. The imperial court's famous debauchee, Jun Moxie Dashao, actually did not go out to commit crimes for more than a month. He did not go to the brothel, he did not go for cockfighting, and he did not go for arson or murder. Even if he stayed at home, he was very well behaved. If he wasn't in his own courtyard, then he would go to the library. Surprisingly, he did not take liberties with any of the maids. Unexpectedly, he became very amiable towards all the servants. All of the above made everyone in the Jun residence feel that this was too unimaginable. Could it be that the sun rose from the west? Or perhaps the sun rose from the south or the north? In any case, it definitely did not rise from the east. Heavens, earth, you have finally opened your eyes. Jun Sunshao finally showed some signs of turning over a new leaf. Looking at the changes in his grandson, Jun Zhantian's heart was greatly comforted. This kid, it seems like there are signs of turning over a new leaf? In this 1 month, Jun Xie finally managed to cultivate the first layer of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. His cultivation had also stabilized a little, and his understanding of the so-called Xian continent had also deepened. Although he still could not be compared to some so-called historians, but compared to the original Jun Moxie, the current Jun Xie could be said to be at the level of an expert professor. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the difference was like the difference between heaven and earth. The only thing that displeased Jun Xie was the 7-colored 9-story Hongjun pagoda within his mind. For an entire month, Jun Xie had been lingering at the first level. He had tried countless times to open up the second level. As long as he felt that there was a slight improvement in his cultivation, he would try again. However, every time, he would suffer greatly, the pain of thousands of needles stabbing into his mind. This made Jun Xie's heart itch unbearably. The first layer already had such a heaven-defying result. Wouldn't the second and third layers have even more good things? But I can't go in. I can't go in, what should I do? He tried again and again, but it still didn't work. Even with Jun Xie's tenacity, he couldn't hold on any longer. In the end, Jun Xie finally confirmed that it was impossible to open the second layer in his normal state. He reckoned that it would be the same as the first layer. When the opportunity arrived, he would enter intentionally or unintentionally. If he couldn't, it would be useless even if he smashed his head against the wall. This had nothing to do with how many attempts he made. Of course, Jun Xie also understood the Xian Qi that had been passed down in his family. He discovered that the Xian Qi of this world was very similar to the internal energy cultivation of his previous world. But in terms of nature, it was similar to Dou Qi. It belonged to a Qi cultivation method that was in between the two. However, every time the Xian Qi was cultivated to a new level, the Xian Qi would undergo a subtle change in color. This point was somewhat similar to the 5 poisons martial arts that Jun Xie had encountered in his previous life. But Xian Qi was definitely not poisonous. With the art of unlocking heaven's fortune in hand, Jun Xie naturally didn't care about this so-called Xian Qi. But in order to deceive others, he still practiced it symbolically. After barely raising his Xian Qi to the 4th level, Jun Xie felt that it was enough and stopped practicing. In the Xian continent, Xian Qi was divided from the 1st to the 9th level, followed by the higher levels of Silver Xian Qi, Gold Xian Qi, Yu Xian Qi, Earth Xian Qi, Tian Xian Qi, and Supreme Divine Rank. From the 1st to the 3rd level, it was red, light red, pink, and bright red. From the 4th to the 6th level, it was purple, light purple, medium purple, and deep purple. From the 7th to the 9th level, it was black, purplish black, grayish black, and bright black. Silver Xian Qi was silver, Gold Xian Qi was gold, and Jade Xian Qi was green. Earth Xian Qi was yellow, Heaven Xian Qi was blue, and Supreme Divine Rank was colorless. And the progress of each level of Xian Qi was very difficult, and when advancing, it would be accompanied by great pain. It was very similar to inner force cultivation, like washing one's hair and marrow. What Jun Xie could emit right now was light purple, 4th level Xian Qi. As a descendant of an aristocratic family, this was really an extremely pitiful and dismal result. I'm so sleepy, I'm going to sleep after posting this chapter. I've revised it 4 times, alas, it's almost equivalent to reworking it twice. Today's second day might be slightly later, I'll probably sleep until the afternoon. I'll immediately update it when I get up. Thanks to the book friend Wang Jinghua, book friend 0812092346237745, Curtain of the Night, transposition, Poor Buckle, Oing Luo, Wu Jilin Wanrong, Rogue Scholar, book friend 1003251747555910, Man Runs Crazy, Clear Sky Sword. Thank you to these brothers and sisters for their tips, thank you. In addition, thank you to the beautiful girl Candy 10 Points Sweet for her 3rd tip, brother Lang Ziwen for her 2nd tip, and brother Jean Lin of the Mortal World for his 2nd tip. During the new book period, thank you brothers and sisters for your support. If you see the comments, please explain. During the new book period, because there are no recommendations this week, it's like running naked, so the number of updates is a little less. Please forgive me. During the recommendation period next week, there will be 3 updates a day, speed up. In addition, next week, I'll try to break into the new book ranking. Brothers and sisters who made reservations in advance will strongly support me. Thank you. Chapter 12. The Xuanhuan fan said that the plot is progressing too slowly. Well, okay, from this chapter onwards I will unveil a big whirlpool for everyone. As for the female lead, hee soon. On this day, Jun Xie was chatting with Ku'er with nothing to do. During this period of time, June Xie's behavior and personality had changed greatly. The little girl was no longer as afraid of him as before. Although she still refused to get close to him, she no longer rejected him, especially the stories that June Xie told her. Every time this happened, the little girl would place her two small hands on her cheeks, her big eyes blinking as she quietly sat in front of June Xie, listening attentively to the story, afraid that she would miss out on a single sentence. She would be sad or happy, cry or laugh, or open her pretty eyes wide and nervous according to the experience of the characters in the story. June Xie told a story about a mermaid, which directly moved the little girl to tears like a river bursting its bank. She sobbed and cried for a whole day. From then on, June Xie swore to himself that he would never tell a tragic story to a woman again. Tears drown people. Young Master Tang is here. As June Xie was talking about Sun Wukong being imprisoned within the 8 trigrams furnace, the little lowly before him was propping up her fragrant cheeks, her eyes unblinking as she listened attentively. Her little hands were clasped together, showing that she was feeling extremely nervous about Sun Wukong's predicament. Suddenly, a guard rushed in to report. "Young Master Tang?" June Xie raised his head in surprise and immediately searched through the memory of this person. "Come in quickly." From afar, a meatball rolled over from the courtyard, shouting as it rolled. Its voice was very miserable. "Third young master, brother Mo Xie, help. This is terrible." June Xie stared at the rolling meatball with his eyes and mouth wide open. It was really hard to imagine that a meatball could speak. It was not until the meatball came close that June Xie realized that it was a person. This person definitely did not have a neck. At least, with June Sunxiao's eyesight, he could not see it. His shoulders were broad and thick, his arms short and thick. Below his round head, his body was streamlined. His legs were no longer than a foot long, but they were as thick as a person's arm. When he walked, the fat on his body rippled like the waves of the Yangtze River. In short, he looked like anything but a bamboo pole, but he did not look like a man. He had only walked a few steps from the entrance of the courtyard, but he was already panting and wiping his sweat. It was obvious that he was very tired. This man was the young master of the Tang family, which was as famous as the Jun family in the Tianxiang city, Tang Yuan. It was indeed very similar, just a few sizes bigger. June Xie thought, Master Tang Dashao, what's wrong? How did things escalate to the point where he needed to save his life? Which blind guy provoked you? June Xie looked at June Moxie's best friend and asked, while trying to hold back his laughter. Damn it, it's all because of those bastards from the Li family, the Meng family, and the Song family. Young Master Tang was very indignant. He tried his best to open his eyes, which were covered in fat, and said, "These past few days in our 1,000 gold haul, I, your older brother, did not come out for 10 days and lost a total of 150,000 taels of silver. Third young master, you have to save me. Otherwise, when I return, I will definitely be beaten to death by the old man." 150,000 taels of silver. June Xie was shocked. How did you lose so much? Where did you get so much money from? Tang Yuan sighed. At the beginning of the day I won 50,000 taels of silver. If I didn't let you win, would you have continued to gamble? How did you lose? You really dare to play? June Xie stared at him. Tang Yuan did not dare to refute and mumbled. Didn't you also lose 100,000 taels of silver last month? I only lost a little more than you, and you still say that I... What's the point of saying that? Sigh, it's just 150,000 taels of silver. It's not like you can't afford to lose. Is there a need to ask me for help? June Xie suddenly remembered that these guys in front of him could not be judged by common sense. They were all very typical wastrels. Even your old man wouldn't beat you to death for a mere 150,000 taels of silver, right? It's not like you haven't lost this number before. But I ran out of money later on. I said I would go home to get more, but Li Bo provoked me, saying that everyone was tired and that if I left, they would call it a day. I made up my mind then. Tang Yuan looked at Jun Xie pitifully, his face full of regret. Then what? Jun Xie suddenly felt that something was wrong. Even if I lose, I don't lose in spirit. I panicked, so I bet my jade pendant and sword, betting 300,000 taels of silver. I thought that I would be able to win it back quickly, but I didn't expect. I still lost in the end. Tang Yuan looked like he was about to cry, wanting to say something. Even if you lose, you don't lose in spirit. I remember that your sword is the famous snow-blowing sword that your father bought at a high price, right? That's a godly weapon that can cut through iron like mud. Plus your jade pendant made of top-grade warm jade. I remember that you spent 1,000,000 taels of silver to buy those two things, right? You only bet 300,000 taels of silver on those two things together? Even if it's a discount sale, you shouldn't sell it like that, right? Jun Xie was a little speechless. This guy was too good at squandering, right? I can't do anything, can I? I was in a deadlock. Besides, I don't know why, but when my mind was in a daze, Tang Yuan mumbled. Even if you lost those two things, you could have just used them as collateral and redeemed them later. Your father dotes on you so much, he would at most reprimand you a little. It's not like he would kill you, right? Anyway, your family has plenty of money. 1,800,000 taels of silver, do you really think it's a big deal? Jun Xie snorted twice. Nonsense, those two things are treasures. Don't tell me I don't want to win them back on the spot? Tang Yuan was a little indignant. It's not like you don't know about the old man's family discipline. You even saw me experience it once before. That was enough to peel off a layer of my skin. So, you continued to gamble? What did you bet on this time? You have a lot of valuable things, but you don't have anything that's worth 1,000,000 or 800,000 taels of silver. Jun Xie was an experienced person and was especially familiar with the psychology of gamblers. This fatty must have bet on something that he shouldn't have, otherwise, he wouldn't be so anxious. That's right, I really didn't have anything valuable on me at that time. In the end, in a moment of desperation, I bet my wife. Tang Yuan cried miserably, looking so depressed that he wanted to commit suicide. That's my wife that I haven't married yet. Kuer, who was at the side, cried out in surprise. Her beautiful eyes widened as she looked at Tang Yuan. Her eyes were filled with disbelief, and there was even a hint of disgust in the depths of her eyes. She grumbled in her heart. Young master has finally gotten better, but this bunch of scoundrels are here again. What? You bet on your wife? You still brought your wife over for something like that? Jun Xie almost fell off his chair and fainted. This was too shocking. This was simply unimaginable. Tang Yuan's fiancée was not only his wife, but also the daughter of the Assistant Minister of Justice, Sun Qing-he. She was the daughter of a noble family, the daughter of a noble family. If this matter were to spread, it would be a huge joke. The son of the Minister of Revenue gambled, and lost to the daughter of the Assistant Minister of Justice. If this matter were to spread, the old man of the Tang family would definitely pull out all of this fatty's fat and use it as a sky lantern. I didn't bring her. Tang Yuan was on the verge of tears. But I wrote an IOU, using her as collateral for 1,000,000 taels of silver. It's written in black and white, this and that, and my signature, pig. You're a pig. One was the daughter of the Minister of Justice, the other was the daughter-in-law of the Minister of Revenue. This was a matter that concerned the reputation and future of the two great families, and it was only 1,000,000 taels of silver. Jun Xie was so angry that he laughed. You actually signed it. What about the 1,000,000 taels? I lost. I also lost. Tang Yuan sat on the ground and wailed loudly, causing the ground to tremble. They said that if I don't bring the 1,500,000 taels in 6 hours, they don't want the money, they don't want the person, they just want the IOU to be made public. My God! Jun Xie was speechless. How could it be 1,500,000 taels? Isn't it 1,000,000 taels? This is the condition of giving me 3 hours. Tang Yuan's face was covered with snot and tears. Third young master, you must save me. I am already at the end of my rope.
I'll save you. How do you want me to save you?
How do I have so much money? Jun Xie flatly refused. What a joke, I can't even finish killing this kind of person, and I actually have to take out money to help this kind of gambler. Even if I have money, I won't lend it to you. You don't need money. Tang Yuan suddenly became spirited, his small eyes blinking, and said, Li Feng and Meng Haizhou made a condition, saying that Jun Sunshao hasn't been here for a long time. As long as I bring you to gamble with them, they will return the IOU to me. I actually have such a big face? Jun Xie shook his head. Based on the actions of this debauchee that he had taken over, it was likely that he would not be able to do much in the casino. As for his reputation, it was likely that his notoriety had reached the pinnacle. A few days ago, an embarrassing thing happened, 3 days ago, I posted the group number under the book's introduction, and for 2 days, no one joined the group. I was very curious, so I went to check. It turned out that I wrote the wrong number. I quickly corrected it, then waited for another day, and still no one joined the group. Candy 10 Points Sweet left a message saying that the group refused to join. I quickly went to check, and it turned out that it was set up wrongly. Oh my God, I almost hit my head on the group number and died, thanks to Human Running Crazy, Dream Heart C, Mortal Worlds Golden Chilin, Night Difference, Night Curtain, Pirated Reader, Fantasy Fan, Book Friend 10011141227170088, Candy 10 Points Sweet, Evildoer, Fire of Beacon. Thank you to these brothers and sisters for your support. Some of the brothers are even doing it for the 3rd or 4th time. For this, Feng Ling expresses his sincere gratitude. Chapter 13. It is absolutely true. Third young master. Tang Yuan grabbed his hand and Jun Xie suddenly felt as if his hand was wrapped in a layer of fat. That is indeed what they said. They said that as long as third young master arrives, they will immediately hand over the IOU and everything will be fine.
They really said that?
Jun Xie frowned and his eyes flashed with a trace of haze. He had already sensed that something was not right. Why was it that the more he listened, the more things seemed to change? It was Fatty who had lost to his wife. Why was everything slowly shifting to him? It seemed that there was some kind of secret behind all this, and the target was him? This was definitely a trap. Disregarding everything else, with the original Jun Moxie's extremely idiotic temperament, once he heard that his brother was being bullied, he would immediately fly into a rage. When he heard that the other party was giving him face, he would immediately become complacent and arrogant. He would not even think twice before stepping forward. Once he stepped forward, he would fall right into the trap that the other party had laid out. Since the other party had the ability to play around with Fatty, it would not be difficult for them to deal with the previous Jun Xie as well. If this was a trap specifically targeted at Jun Moxie, then the person who set up this trap would have a thorough understanding of Jun Moxie's character. No, I believe that targeting Jun Moxie is only the surface level. No one would be interested in using such a scheme against a completely harmless debauchee. Their real target should be Grandpa Jun. Behind them, there might be someone else directing them. After all, the Jun family and Grandpa Jun was not someone that just anyone could afford to offend. Jun Xie looked at Fatty standing before him, secretly wondering what role this Fatty was playing in this trap. Was he friend or foe? Observing the expression on Tang Yuan's face as though he was about to piss in his pants, Jun Xie secretly came to a conclusion. If this Fatty is not faking it, then he must be a super idiot. If this fatty was faking it, then he was probably an actor with superb acting skills. Moreover, he was a dangerous person who hid himself very well. Go? Or not go? Jun Xie instantly made up his mind. How could he not go for something so fun? With his gambling skills, how could he possibly lose? Besides, if he did not go, how would he know who was after him? Jun Xie never had the habit of letting his enemies hide in the dark. Grab them and kill them. This was his usual style. Secretly circulating the divine creation art within his body, the corners of Jun Xie's mouth curled into a smile. Even if this is a gamble, I will not lose. Using this internal force to cheat is just too easy. How many silver notes do we have? Having made up his mind, Jun Xie turned to ask Ku'er. Hearing Jun Xie use the word we, little Ku'er's heart was suddenly filled with a sense of shyness and happiness. She felt an inexplicable sense of sweetness in her heart as she said with a blushing face. Since the last time when Old Master had deducted Young Master's expenses, Young Master's silver chest now has 120,000 silver notes, 30,000 gold notes, 300 gold leaves, 100 silver ingots, and silver fragments. Enough. We don't need that much. Seeing that Ku'er was about to continue counting in detail, Jun Xie quickly stopped her. Otherwise, this stubborn girl might end up counting how many copper coins were left. Take out 50,000 taels of silver notes and prepare another 10 or so taels of silver fragments. Jun Xie said. How can this be enough? Tang Yuan almost jumped up, his face full of pleading. Brother, third young master, this is not even enough. Are you trying to force me to death? I'm begging you. Fatty, didn't you say just now that I'll be there to collect your IOU? We're going to gamble, not to give away money. Tang Dashao, why bring so much? Isn't that a burden? Don't you believe in my unrivaled gambling skills? Jun Xie said with a straight face. Your unrivaled gambling skills? A pair of slender eyes surprisingly widened. This was definitely a difficult action for the fat on Tang Yuan's face. The corner of Tang Yuan's mouth twitched. If it wasn't for the fear and frustration in his heart, he would have laughed out loud. He cursed in his heart. I don't think I've ever seen you win with that unrivaled gambling skills of yours. In terms of losing money, you're right to call yourself unrivaled in the world. Whatever, you just have to go. As long as I get that IOU back, I don't have to be afraid of anything. Damn it, how did I get hot-headed and push my wife down? This is really strange. It's better to bring less money, at least I won't lose too much. Jun Xie pocketed the banknotes and ordered for 2 horses to be prepared. Tang Yuan had long since become impatient. His round body rolled to the door with a schwa sound. His small eyes darted around with a look of fear. Hurry up and leave, third young master. If we are unlucky enough to bump into your old master, then we will be finished. You don't know how much pressure I have to bear every time I come to your house to look for you. Sigh. Jun Xie smiled and jumped on the horse's back. He squinted at him and said, I see that you don't look that scared today. Tang Yuan jumped on the horse's back. The strong horse neighed loudly under his weight. Its hooves went limp and it almost fell to the ground. It tried its best to stand up straight. Perhaps the horse was also puzzled. I've carried many people. I can run freely even if it's a general wearing armor and holding a weapon. Why is this human so heavy today? I almost lost my front hooves because of a momentary miscalculation. Jun Xie couldn't help but laugh. He squeezed his legs and the strong horse moved forward. The 8 bodyguards behind him were all strong and sturdy. Each of them carried a sword and followed closely behind. Tang Yuan's horse also started to move with difficulty. It snorted all the way as it kept up with Jun Xie. Once outside was Dongfeng Street, one of the most luxurious streets in Tianxiang City. Tang Yuan did not care about whether his horse would be able to take it or not. He took the lead and rushed out, taking the lead. His face was filled with anxiety as he kept glancing back, clearly annoyed that Tang Yuan was moving too slowly. In the blink of an eye, he had already exited the Dongfeng Main Street. Not far to the south was a restaurant, the 1,000 Miles Fragrance Restaurant. This was the property of the Li family. Behind the restaurant was a large, unused courtyard. This was the 1,000 Gold Hall that Tang Yuan had mentioned. The location of this place was hidden, and it was the perfect place for the young masters of the aristocracy to squander their money. As long as they could think of something, they could gamble here. Jun Xie was about to urge his horse forward when he suddenly saw a few people coming from the side of the road. The two people in the lead were two young girls. One of them was walking in the front with an angry look on her face. She shouted, "Don't follow me anymore. You're annoying." The other girl was running after them and trying to persuade them. Behind the two of them, there were also 8 expressionless guards following closely behind them. They looked like the daughters of some rich and powerful families. Jun Xie glanced over and saw that the young girl was pouting. Her face displayed an unruly expression, but her appearance was extremely beautiful. The young girl was already in a fit of anger. Seeing that Jun Xie was staring at her, she could not help but spit out a mouthful of saliva. Placing her hands on her waist, she scolded, "What are you looking at? Lecher!" Just as this woman was feeling the most vexed, she saw the infamous playboy, Jun Xie. Coincidentally, the playboy was also staring at her. She could not help but think of using him to vent her anger. Chapter 14. The plot is unfolding. Jun Xie's heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly remembered that in his previous life, he was also strolling on the streets, and saw that she was very beautiful, and could not help but take a few more glances. Who would have thought that the girl was obviously angry at that time, and actually turned around and scolded, "What are you looking at? Haven't you seen a beauty before, you smelly rogue?" Who would have thought that the two would get to know each other? Jun Xie himself was an assassin, and had always been carefully avoiding something, until something happened to him, and the two worlds were separated. Thinking of this, he could not help but feel a little disappointed. At this moment, Jun Xie felt like he was looking back at history, and his heart could not help but warm up. Looking at the girl again, he felt inexplicably more amiable, and simply smiled. "Miss, we seem to have met somewhere before, you look very familiar to me." The girl gritted her teeth and glared at him. "Bah, this girl also looks very familiar to you, you scum. Jun Sunshao, what tricks are you trying to play today? Pretending to meet for the first time? So they really do know each other?" Jun Xie quickly retrieved the information on this unruly woman from his memories. He could not help but smile awkwardly and tried to find a topic to talk about. "What a coincidence, it turns out that we are acquainted with each other, Miss Dugu." "This is called coincidence? What kind of words are these?" That Miss Dugu stared at him in astonishment while the young girl behind her could not help but giggle. At this time, Tang Yuan noticed that Jun Xie was not following them and turned his horse around. Hearing Jun Xie's words, he could not help but admire Jun Xie from the bottom of his heart. It turns out that the third young master Jun is an expert in flirting with beauties. However, his courage was even more worthy of admiration, to dare to speak to the number 1 unruly girl of Tianxiang Kingdom, Dugu Xiaoyi, in such a manner, one would not be able to find many in the entire Tianxiang city. The girl glared at Jun Xie, and her eyes slowly revealed an ominous glint. "Jun Moxie, did you not get enough of the beating last time? Since this girl is not in a good mood today, I can personally help you loosen up your bones." Jun Xie was startled, and then remembered that this girl, Dugu Xiaoyi, was the person that Jun Moxie was most afraid of. He seemed to have done something and was beaten up by Dugu Xiaoyi, and could not get out of bed for almost half a month. "Miss Dugu, I trust you have been well since we last met, ahem? I still have something to do, I will leave first, see you later." Jun Xie was ready to leave. Looking at the little chili pepper's posture, It seemed as though she was about to pounce on him with her claws and fangs bared. According to June Moxie's memories, this little chili pepper was not that old, but she was a highly skilled fighter. Even if there were several June Moxies, they would still be no match for her. Although June Moxie was not afraid, this was not the time to reveal his true strength. Naturally, he had to wisely choose to protect himself. Stop right there for this girl. Dugu Xiaoyi raised her chin high and looked at Jun Xie with disdain. Where are you going? Are you going to do something bad again? Let me tell you, June Moxie, since you have met me, don't think of doing anything bad and be obedient. Let me vent my anger and I will let you go. Tang Yuan's face was dripping with sweat as he stamped his feet. He was complaining in his heart. I say, third young Master June, this great aunt can't wait to avoid you. Why did you choose to provoke her? No matter how beautiful she is, it is not as important as your own life, is it? Looking at the bright eyes of the young girl in front of him, yet displaying a domineering and arrogant demeanor, Jun Xie suddenly had an idea. Pretending to be evasive, he said, Miss Dugu, the place we are going to, this cough, it is not suitable for a girl to go there. Don't tell me you are going to visit a brothel? As expected, he was bold enough to say such things. Dugu Xiaoyi snorted coldly, and looked at the two of them with disdain. Shameless bastards! You said we are going to visit a brothel? Do you think everyone thinks the same way as you? Jun Xie immediately put on an angry expression, as if he had been wronged. We are only going to the 1,000 Gold Hall to gamble a little. As if realizing that he had misspoken, Jun Xie hurriedly shut his mouth. 1,000 Gold Hall? Gamble? Hearing the first half of Jun Xie's words, she became even angrier. Unexpectedly, when she heard the second half of Jun Xie's words, Dugu Xiaoyi's eyes unconsciously lit up. She squinted her eyes and smiled, rolling her eyes, revealing a pair of cute little canine teeth. I have never been there before, bring me there. Her tone was like a command, and there was no room for argument. One could not help but admire this woman's leaps and bounds of thought. Miss! The girl beside her was obviously her personal maid, and she timidly pulled on her sleeves, trying to dissuade her. This was very reasonable. The place where the two debauches of Tianxiang City were going was most likely not a good place, and the young lady was the daughter of a noble family. How could she mingle with them? Dugu Xiaoyi ignored her and excitedly said, Don't worry, my two brothers talk about the 1,000 Gold Hall every day. It must be a very special place. This time, I must go and see for myself. She then grabbed Jun Xie's ear. Bring me there. As long as you bring me there, I will let you go today. It would have been easy for Jun Xie to avoid it, but after thinking about it, he decided not to. He could only grimace and allow her to pull his ear as she walked forward. The 8 bodyguards behind him smiled bitterly, looked at each other, and followed. The 8 bodyguards of Dugu Xiaoyi were very congenial, but they couldn't not congenial, because the 16 of them were basically in the same situation. They were following Jun Xie, the debauchee Dashao, so they were naturally sullen, but in fact, following Dugu Xiaoyi wasn't necessarily any better. Everyone was actually sullen, so it was easy to say that they were on the same side. Tang Yuan let out a long sigh. Why did such a tigress appear out of nowhere? If my promissory note is accidentally seen by her. Tang Yuan shuddered as he thought to himself. She is confident that the news will spread throughout the imperial capital within half a day, and the entire country will know about it within 2 days. If that's the case, I might as well just commit suicide and be happy. The group of people arrived at the 1,000 Miles Fragrance House in a grandiose manner, and passed through the halls and courtyards, arriving at the large courtyard at the back. Tang Yuan impatiently rushed in and shouted, Jun Sunshao is here, hurry up and return that to me. Following a burst of complacent laughter, 6 youths appeared at the entrance of the main hall. The moment they appeared, they did not even have the time to speak when they saw Dugu Xiaoyi, who was in the process of twisting Jun Xie's ear. Suddenly, their faces turned ashen. At present, there were two major factions that maintained a neutral position among the princes. One was the Dugu family, and the other was the Jun family. These two forces held a pivotal position in both the imperial court and the army. And this Miss Dugu Xiaoyi was the only pearl in the Dugu family's palm, and the Dugu family had a large number of males, with a total of 7 males, and only one little girl, and since she was rare, she was naturally treasured, and had been spoiled since childhood. Although this Miss Xiaoyi was not a girl, she was extremely talented, and at a young age, her xianqi cultivation was quite high, and she also possessed a strong sense of justice, and it could be said that her reputation in Tianxiang City had spread far and wide, and was known as the bane of debauches. Today, including Jun Xie, all 8 dashaos had suffered at her hands. Speaking of the Dugu family's old man, Dugu Xiaotian was also a super xianqi expert, and it was said that his attainments had already reached the heaven realm, and he was the only old man in the empire who could challenge the Jun family's Jun Zhantian. His position was also comparable, and he was also the Grand Duke of the empire. As for Dugu Xiaoyi's father, Dugu Wudi, and 3 of her uncles were now generals of the empire, and her 7 brothers all held positions in the military. It could be said that their power was overwhelming, and as of now, they were even more powerful than the Jun family. Thanks to Book Taster is Me, King 88, Dark Extinguish, Bad Pen V, Tears, Broken Feather, Heavenly Traveler, Whispers in the Zen Forest, Dark Horse Prince No. 2, Dreamy Heart C, Lin Wan Rong, Asterisk, The Fool, Book Friend 100325174755910. Thank you to these brothers for your support. Thank you to my brothers and sisters. Thanks to ZKZSF and Tang Yuana for their support. Thank you. This week's release of books for 6 days, 3,500 bookmarks, running naked to the 2nd place in the list of new books. Feng Ling was very satisfied with this result. I am very proud because I have so many brothers and sisters supporting me, and my brothers and sisters are so strong. I am proud. After a week of testing his sword and sharpening his knife, Feng Ling now felt a kind of fighting spirit. From 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I will recommend heavily, and from midnight tonight, I will officially fight for the new books list. There are too many gods in the same batch, but I am confident that with my brothers and sisters, we will be able to fight our way out. Charge all the way up. Here, I beseech my brothers, my sisters, all the recommendation votes after midnight, throw them all over here. Whether the evil monarch will be a dragon or a worm, it all depends on my brothers and sisters. I believe that my brothers and sisters will not let me down. Chapter 15. The Dugu family, from the old to the young, had a bad habit. They were extremely protective of their own people. This was especially true for Dugu Xiaoyi's father, Dugu Wudi. He was extremely protective of his own people to the point of being unreasonable. He could even be called the empire's number 1 troublemaker. If someone dared to bully his daughter, Dugu Wudi would immediately dispatch an army to retaliate. Who would dare to provoke such a lawless troublemaker who could casually dispatch an army? Jun Moxie had Grandpa Jun's protection, but Dugu Xiaoyi still dared to teach him a lesson. It was not that Grandpa Jun could not deal with Great General Dugu Wudi, but if Grandpa Jun were to send a punitive expedition against him, Old Man Dugu would definitely stand up to confront him. That was because Great General Wudi's protective nature was inherited from his father. Therefore, in Jun Moxie's memories, the person he feared the most was his grandfather, Jun Zhantian. The second was this Dugu Xiaoyi. No, the first was Dugu Xiaoyi, and the second was his grandfather. After all, his grandfather was only lecturing him, and could not bear to really hit him. However, if he fell into the hands of this great aunt, he would definitely be beaten up. Moreover, he would be beaten up for nothing. Even Jun Moxie could not afford to provoke such a big character, let alone the other debauches. And now, this little princess of the Dugu family had actually come here. I can't do anything about it. June Moxie tilted his head and spread out his hands, pointing at the fair and tender little hand that was still pinching his ear. Look at me, what can I do? If any of you have any ideas, feel free to send me away. In any case, don't say anything about me. What?
You don't welcome me?
Don't tell me I don't have money? Dugu Xiaoyi glared at them and took out her purse. She proudly shook it and raised her beautiful eyebrows. This great aunt has money. The debauches were on the verge of collapsing, scared witless. You have plenty of silver, but the question is, who dares to win against you? Your father will bring an army to collect the debt the next day if he wins your money. But, if old man Dugu is in a good mood, and comes to our house for a stroll, then, how will we live? Tang Yuan didn't care what they were thinking. His eyes were already burning. Let's not talk about these useless things first. Hurry up and give me back my thing. June Sunshao was already here, and he couldn't run away. This is what you promised me. A real man keeps his word. If a man doesn't keep his word, how can he stand between heaven and earth? Even with June Xie's composure, after hearing Fatty's last words, he almost vomited. With your character and actions, how dare you call yourself a man? Don't insult the word man. Among the 6 youths, the one with a calm expression was called Li Feng. He was the grandson of the Grand Preceptor Li Shang. The 2 youths behind him were Li Zhen and Li Lin. They were all his brothers. Beside him was a skinny youth with 2 small mustaches. His eyes were deep and solemn. He was Meng Haizhou, the eldest son of the Minister of Personnel, Meng Jianghu. He was a very capable man. The 2 behind him were called Meng Liang and Meng Fei. They were also members of the Meng family. Li Feng was full of smiles. Miss Dugu has graced us with her presence. Quick, please come in. He turned to the side. Serve Miss Dugu well. If she isn't satisfied, I'll skin you alive. Then, he turned his head and smiled. He gave Meng Haizhou a meaningful look and said, since 3rd young Master June is here, then this joke should end. Look at how anxious young Master Tang is. He's even sweating. A real man lives between heaven and earth. How can he go back on his word? Let's return that thing to him first. Meng Haizhou nodded and said to Tang Yuan, I can give you the thing, but the 1,500,000 taels of silver must not be less. Tang Yuan only wanted to get back the IOU. As for the 1,500,000 taels of silver, although it was not a small amount, he didn't care about it. He agreed immediately. Jun Xie watched coldly from the side. He only sneered in his heart. Tang Yuan was afraid of this matter, but these 2 might not be completely without scruples. Even if Tang Yuan hadn't invited him over, they wouldn't have dared to rashly publicize Tang Yuan's promissory note. This was because doing so would definitely cause the Tang and Sun families to retaliate with all their might. Furthermore, these 2 families would become mortal enemies, and in the end, they would only be destroyed indiscriminately. So this matter might seem big, but as long as they thought it through, it wasn't a big deal. Their target was still him. However, after Tang Yuan got back the IOU, he didn't have to worry about this. Rumors were bound to spread and attack the Tang family. This was something that could be foreseen. What could make Tang Dashao so anxious? Let me see, it'll be an eye-opener. Dugu Xiaoyi obviously didn't want to be left out. She was very curious. Seeing that Tang Yuan had a relieved look on his face when he got the IOU, she suddenly became very curious. She stretched out her fair and tender hand. Tang Yuan's face turned bitter. He threw the IOU into his mouth at lightning speed. He chewed twice, stretched out his neck and swallowed it. He smacked his lips with an innocent look on his face. It was difficult for his fat neck to stretch like a giraffe in an instant. Stupid fatty, you dare to play with me? How dare you? Dugu Xiaoyi suddenly became furious. She bared her fangs and brandished her claws as she pounced forward and grabbed Tang Yuan's collar. Unexpectedly, she lifted his nearly 400-pound body and angrily shouted, "Quickly spit it out for me!" The rest of the 7 people, including June Xie, couldn't stop their eyebrows from twitching. They secretly swallowed a few mouthfuls of saliva. Their mouths were crooked, their eyes were slanted, their lips were green and their faces were pale. "Cough, Miss Dugu, the IOU is actually not that big of a deal. June Sunshao has been grounded by Grandpa June and everyone misses him. Just now, I made a bet with Fatty Tang. If June Sunshao doesn't come, then I will eat the IOU. If June Sunshao comes, then Fatty Tang will eat it. Yes, it's that simple. Fatty Tang is indeed a man, he doesn't regret his words. Ha ha." Meng Haizhou laughed dryly and quickly came out to smooth things over. This person could be considered to have some talent. With just a few words, he was able to smooth things over seamlessly. If Fatty Tang were to really spit out the IOU and Dugu Xiaoyi saw the contents, then this matter would really become a big deal. Jun Xie raised his eyebrows and secretly glanced at Meng Haizhou. This person was able to come up with such a flawless reason in such a short period of time. Moreover, he was able to say it without any change in expression. Moreover, it was reasonable and well-founded. He was indeed not a simple person. Truth be told, in that moment, Jun Xie had almost planned to secretly make Fatty spit out the IOU and make use of Dugu Xiaoyi to stir up this storm. However, although Fatty Tang was unworthy, he was still Jun Moxie's good friend. Besides, if he wanted to deal with these debauches, Jun Xie was confident that he could make them suffer in a few moves. In the end, he reluctantly gave up on this idea. But just in case, I still have to. Cough, cough, cough. Dugu Xiaoyi looked at the crowd doubtfully. The debauches immediately nodded their heads like chickens pecking at rice. That's right. There's no mistake. Only then did they put Tang Yuan down. Tang Yuan's face was almost purple from being strangled by her. He retched a few times, afraid that he would spit out the IOU. Finally, he managed to hold it in. "Everyone, please come in." Li Feng was the owner of this house, so he acted respectfully. Jun Xie smiled and put on an arrogant and despotic demeanor as he strode in. With a pa sound, he sat down on an armchair and crossed his legs, swinging them back and forth. Looking at his current appearance, it was truly the standard posture of a hooligan, a typical debauchee. Dugu Xiaoyi frowned. She was instantly annoyed and almost wanted to kick him again. "Didn't you miss me?" "Coincidentally, I also miss your money." Jun Xie smiled evilly. "How do you want to play? Let's draw the line. A new week has begun. Our evil prince will also unfold his plot this week. The new books list has also been refreshed, so rush the list. Seeking recommendation votes. My powerful brothers and sisters, let us fight for the new books ranking in a splendid manner. Let everyone see how powerful the brothers and sisters of the evil monarch are. Recommended time period: midnight, 12, noon, and 18 p.m. respectively. Thank you to all my brothers and sisters for your support and rewards. Thank you. Chapter 16. Third young master is indeed straightforward. Meng Haizhou gave a thumbs up and praised, as expected of the Jun family's third young master. Truly heroic, just like Grandpa Jun's style back in the day. These words sounded like a compliment but were actually derogatory. However, the original Jun Mo Xie might not have been able to hear it. As he spoke, Meng Haizhou glanced at Tang Yuan. Just now we played dice with Tang Dashao for a while, and Tang Dashao could not hold on any longer. Why don't we use dice to determine the winner? I wonder if third young master has the guts to do so? Tang Yuan's face turned red, and he snorted a few times, but did not speak. Dice. Jun Xie repeated. Gambling on this? Do you think this young master is afraid of you? He sighed in his heart. Another goading. If it was the original Jun Moxie, it would be strange if he did not get led by the nose. Count me in as well. Dugu Xiaoyi said excitedly. Meng Haizhou suddenly felt a headache coming on. Servants, why aren't you serving tea to our honored guests? Li Feng hurriedly said. Several cups of tea were served, placed in front of everyone. Tang Yuan picked up the cup and drank it in one gulp. Wiping his mouth, he said, Third young master, I'm counting on you. You have to help me vent my anger. Jun Xie let out an insolent laugh as he raised his teacup. His eyes, however, quickly scanned the faces of everyone present. At this moment, Jun Xie was able to sense the happiness of Li Feng and Meng Haizhou. He could not help but feel puzzled. He lowered his head to look at the tea, bringing it to his mouth and sniffing it. Can this kind of inferior tea be used to entertain guests? This is simply too low grade. He then slammed the cup down heavily on the table. With just a sniff, Jun Xie was able to discern that the tea contained a strong scent of hallucinogenic grass. This strange scent was somewhat similar to the scent of opium poppies. It was likely that the effects were similar as well. Drinking it may not cause any harm to the body, but it would likely affect one's mind. Meng Haizhou's clothes were brightly colored, but the patterns on them were somewhat messy, giving off a strange feeling. Additionally, there was also a scent on his body. When combined with the scent of the hallucinogenic grass, it caused one's heart to waver. It seemed that this tea, this clothes, this fragrance, all had problems. Moreover, they were all connected to one another. It seemed that there was an extremely powerful pharmacist behind these people. No wonder Tang Yuan even bet his wife to lose, so that's why. Looking at the tea in Dugu Xiaoyi's hand, it was crystal clear, and there was nothing strange about it. Obviously, there was no poison in it. After all, they did not dare to offend the Dugu family. Hurry up and give third young master another cup of tea. Li Feng shouted without batting an eyelid. Seeing that Jun Xie did not drink it, he immediately thought of another plan. Forget it, there's no need to go through so much trouble. We're here to gamble, not to drink tea. If we really wanted to drink tea, we wouldn't have come here. Jun Xie said lazily. I'll take this cup, no need to change. He raised his head and drank it in one gulp. Come on, hurry up and start, I can't wait. Li Feng, Meng Haizhou, and the others were all delighted and said, We'll do as third young master says. Saying so, they ordered the servants to lead the way. They entered in a line and came to an empty hall. Apart from a large stone table and dozens of chairs, there was nothing else. Along the way, they did not see anyone else. It seemed that in order to deal with Jun Moxie, this place was closed for the day. As they were walking on the road, Jun Xie suddenly raised his head and sneezed. The sneeze sprayed onto Tang Yuan's body, causing his snot and saliva to drip onto his robe. Tang Yuan let out a strange cry and hurriedly wiped it off. Jun Xie rubbed his nose and spat out a mouthful of saliva. He muttered to himself, Strange, why do I feel dizzy and want to sneeze? Li Feng and Meng Haizhou looked at each other, their faces full of joy. The drug has begun to take effect, waha. In the Grand Preceptor's mansion, Grand Preceptor Li Shang was leaning on a soft couch with his eyes half closed, leisurely listening to the melodious singing of the songstress in front of the curtains. He smiled and asked, This time, why did they hand over this matter to Li Feng and Li Zhen? If they really mess it up, wouldn't we have missed a great opportunity? That Jun family's little devil is nothing to be afraid of, but the old devil Jun behind him is extremely difficult to provoke. If he finds out, although we are not afraid, it will still be troublesome. His words seemed to contain a sense of blame, but his tone was very relaxed. Although it was a question, his expression showed that he was very confident and at ease with the person in front of him. In front of him was a handsome young man dressed in a white robe. He had red lips, white teeth, delicate eyebrows, and a tall stature. He was an elegant and handsome man. His body was like a mountain, and his every movement was calm and unruffled, revealing an elegant and noble demeanor. Hearing this, he smiled lightly and said in a flat tone, Grandpa, you've always been so careful. This grandson admires you. But that jeune monsieur is just a downright debauchee. If we send out a heavyweight to deal with such a person, then we're overestimating him. Even if this plan fails, with his character, we'll certainly have more opportunities, so there's really no need to pay too much attention to him. Moreover, if a higher-level person were to mix with this kind of lowly debauchee, it would be more likely to expose our tracks and ruin the big plan. Although June Moxie is a debauchee, he also thinks highly of himself. If we send out a noble and resourceful person to deal with June Moxie, it will only backfire. His long eyebrows twitched, and the corners of his mouth revealed a trace of ridicule. Li Feng and Li Zhen may be unfilial, but they can actually get along with June Moxie. This is the saying, everyone has their own use. Using debauches to deal with debauches, especially brainless debauches like June Moxie, with these two as the main leaders, we will receive unexpected miraculous result. I'm afraid that June Monsieur won't buy it if we use our core strength to deal with someone like June Monsieur. Moreover, haha. He chuckled softly. He didn't say the rest of his words, but everyone understood what he meant. Why use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken? Experts have to deal with experts. Good steel must be used on the blade's edge. Asking a peerless expert to deal with a defenseless commoner, not only will they not feel that the task is easy, but they will also feel humiliated. If spring snow were to be played in front of a butcher, not only would the player feel aggrieved, even the butcher would feel as if he was sitting on pins and needles, or perhaps even drowsy. That's true. Li Shang looked at his eldest grandson, Li Yuran, with praise, and gave affirmation to his words. The more he looked at this grandson, the more satisfied he was. Zhangsun Yuran was the leading figure of the younger generation in his family. Whether it was his gestures, speech, or expression, he displayed the demeanor of a leader, and was truly impeccable. Regardless of whether it was his wit or his schemes, he was the best of the best. Even his cultivation of Xian Qi belonged to the geniuses among geniuses, and he had already entered the realm of a gold Xian expert at the age of 25. This kind of speed, even in the entire Tianxiang kingdom, was absolutely unique, and the most commendable thing was that Li Yuran's temperament was very calm, neither arrogant nor rash, and he was also very low-key. He was extremely good at scheming in the dark and setting up everything. At such a young age, he already had the embryonic form of a strategist, and could decide the outcome of a battle from 1,000 miles away. Even Li Shang himself at that age was far inferior to him. It could be imagined that, if the Li family wanted to soar, the hope of the next generation would be on Li Yuran's shoulders. Having such a grandson, Li Shang was truly worthy of pride. Li Yuran's greatest strength was that he would never look down on anyone. He would only judge the matter as it stood, and judge people as they were. Even when he was commenting on June Moxie's despicable character, Li Yuran's tone was indifferent, without the slightest bit of contempt or disdain. It was just a simple comment. Such a character, no matter where he was placed, would be the best of the best, and the best of the best. Although this plan is considered thorough, we still need to take precautions. If we can succeed in one go, that would be for the best. Although he felt that it was impossible for June Moxie to escape from this plot, this plan was personally planned by Li Yuran, and it was done through Tang Yuan. With June Moxie's idiotic temperament, it would be strange if he could escape. As long as June Moxie fell into the trap, Li Yuran would naturally have further plans, and he would never be able to escape. At that time, even if June Zhantian's faction did not turn over, it would inevitably fall apart because of this disappointing grandson, and he would no longer be able to pose any threat. What if? Li Yuran frowned and instantly calculated all the plans in her mind. She shook her head with certainty. There is no what if. Moreover, Meng Haizhou is watching from the side. Although Meng Haizhou is not considered a big shot, dealing with June Moxie is not a problem. June Moxie will not be able to escape from the palm of my hand. What if he escapes? Li Shang clearly treated this sentence as a joke. Escapes? But after thinking about it seriously, she finally laughed. Li Yuran leisurely looked out the door and said, "Then, he is not June Moxie. Brothers, we are now second in the new books list, just below Yunda Fengling is very satisfied with this result, but, it seems that the gap between us and Yunda is not that big. Everyone, put in more effort, we will rush forward. Is that good? Everything depends on you. The people behind are chasing closely, everyone can't relax, I will quickly go down to write." 18 p.m., the third chapter. Chapter 17. It was true that everyone had to admit that Liu Ran's plan for June Moxie had been aimed at June Moxie's temperament. In fact, it could even be said to be perfect. However, this perfect plan had a very special flaw. If the target of their plan had been June Moxie, then it would have been a fact that their plan would have been a sure thing. But now June Moxie was June Xie. Would the plan still go smoothly? Inside the 1,000 gold hall. How about we follow third young master's habits? 1,000 taels of silver? Or a little more? Li Feng asked with a smile as everyone sat down around the table. 1,000 taels of silver? Dugu Xiaoyi cried out in surprise. Her fair face flushed red. You're betting that much? Although she was the only daughter of the Dugu family, her daily necessities were always well taken care of. As a girl, she didn't have much to spend other than buying gold and silver jewelry when she was in the mood. The 180 taels of silver barley she had on her was already a lot. She didn't expect to bet 1,000 taels of silver here. The total amount of silver in her pouch was only 11 taels of silver. Actually, this was normal. 1,000 taels of silver was at least a few dozen caddies. Even a nouveau riche wouldn't carry a few dozen caddies of silver around randomly. After all, there were still things like banknotes in this world. 1,000 taels of silver? How long would that take? I don't have that much time. Let's be straightforward. Each bet will be a minimum of 10,000 taels of silver. There's no upper limit. That's it. June Xie laughed. I have plenty of silver. It's just a small amount. It's not worth mentioning. Tang Yuan jumped in fright. A bet of 1,000 taels isn't small, third young master. He clearly knew that June Xie had only brought a total of 50,000 taels with him. If the limit was really 10,000 taels, he would lose it all in minutes if he was unlucky. However, on second thought, it was better to lose it all as soon as possible. He had already lost a lot today. Moreover, he had already gotten the written promissory note, so he couldn't afford to lose his brother as well. If he only lost 50,000 taels, it wouldn't be a big deal. Thus, he didn't stop June Xie. June Sunshao is such a straightforward person. I like dice the most. Everyone depends on their luck. One roll and two stare at each other. It's fair and just. Meng Haizhou laughed. Cut the crap and hurry up. How do we play? Do you want to see who is bigger or smaller, or do you want to guess? June Xie looked a little impatient. If someone was observant, they would be able to see that June Xie's eyes seemed to have turned red, which meant that the drug had begun to take effect. The opportunity was close. Meng Haizhou looked at June Xie's eyes without batting an eyelid and said, "Let's make it simpler. Big or small?" How about that? June Xie nodded. Sure. For the sake of fairness, everyone who participated in the game had to take out a sufficient amount of banknotes and take turns to roll the dice. Whoever had the highest number would be the banker. According to the number of people, if there were 7 people, there would be 7 dice for each banker. If there were 6 people, there would be 6 dice. Then, after this round, there would be the last round. Whoever won would be the banker. After a round of modesty, there were 5 people: June Xie, Meng Haizhou, Meng Fei, Li Feng, and Li Zhen. Tang Yuan was now clean, so he could only be a spectator. Dugu Xiaoyi came in a threatening manner, but she didn't bring enough money with her. If she didn't have enough money, even the heavenly emperor wouldn't give her face. She could only be a spectator. Her pretty face was flushed with anger. She obviously felt that she had lost face. Jun Xie's mind turned. How could he not make use of such a big backer? He said, Miss Dugu is a woman, so naturally, she can't play around with us. In my opinion, how about Miss Dugu versus Piaohong? What is Piaohong? Dugu Xiaoyi's eyes lit up. Piaohong is a bet outside the game. It means that even if you don't participate in the game, you can still place a bet. For example, if you bet 5 taels of silver on me to win, and if I lose, I'll be a burden to Mississippi. Then you won't be able to get your 5 taels of silver back. It'll be considered a public bet, and you'll be able to split it evenly with the other gamblers. But if I win, Miss will be able to bring me luck, and you'll be able to get back 10 taels of silver with interest. Jun Xie explained in detail. Good. Dugu Xiaoyi immediately became excited. Then I'll bet 5 taels of silver on you for the first round. Jun Xie laughed. A beauty betting will increase my luck greatly. I'll win without a doubt. Li Feng and the rest sneered at him. Everyone thought to themselves, laugh, 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 you'll be crying soon. Everyone had thrown the dice, and only Jun Xie was left. Meng Haizhou now had the largest number of points. He had 1 6, 2 5s, and 16 points. With 3 dice, this was already a considerable number of points. If he didn't bet 18 points, then he could only win with 17 points. Li Feng and the others all had smug expressions on their faces. As long as Meng Haizhou was the banker, they were confident that they could continue in one go and make Jun Xie lose so badly that he would have to take off his pants. They would first make him lose until his eyes were red, and then they could smoothly continue with their plan. Jun Xie held the 3 jade dice in his hand, a faint smile on his face. However, he could not stop himself from cursing out in his heart. Doing something to the tea was one thing, but to think that they would actually do something to the dice as well? It was obvious that something else had been poured in, and the weight was exceptionally difficult to grasp. It was definitely not lead, because if it was lead, it would be slightly heavier. But now it was clearly very even. Only a liquid substance like mercury could make it so mysterious and unpredictable. Only someone who was familiar with the mysteries of it would be able to throw an ideal number. If it was an ordinary person, even if they found out that it was a trick, they would not be able to do anything about it. As for himself, Jun Xie blew on it, and with a twist of his wrist, the 3 dice fell into the dice cup, making a pleasant sound as they collided. At the same time, Jun Xie's right hand was placed on the table, and a thin stream of air, as thin as a needle, was sent out from his fingers without anyone noticing, extending into the dice cup. Everyone held their breath at the same time and looked over with their eyes wide open. The 3 dice rolled a few times and stopped. How is this possible? Li Zhen's eyes widened as he exclaimed, his face dejected. Everyone on Meng Haizhou's side let out a disappointed sigh. Only Tang Yuan cheered loudly, dancing with joy and laughing heartily. 2 dice at 6 points, 1 at 5 points, 17 points. It was 1 point higher than Meng Haizhou, who had the highest number of points. Meng Haizhou's side's hopes were dashed, and everyone was dumbfounded. Jun Moxie really had some dog shit luck today. Jun Xie was overjoyed and exclaimed, Waha, Miss Duga's luck is really good, bringing me to prosperity. This is really what the heavens want. Today it's time for me to go on a killing spree. As he spoke, he closed the dice cup and shook it in his hand, urging, place your bets, quickly place your bets. Pa! Jun Xie slammed the dice cup on the stone table and then let go of it. His other hand gently held on to the edge of the stone table, his face nervous. But his internal energy had already reached the bottom of the dice cup, ready to go. The gap between us is getting bigger and bigger? I'll do my best to write, brothers and sisters, do your best too. Everyone charge. Thanks to Azure Cloud Sword, Wind Azure Dragon, Shadow Behind the Light, Nice 123, The Fool, Owing Luowu, and other brothers and sisters for their gifts and support. Thanks to Dark Mountain Clouds and Rain for your support. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.